welcome everybody to the first PSAC, Power Supply Advisory Team meeting. Thank you all for being here. I want to first of all start off with safety and make mention, of course, of where we are. Most of you, of course, have been here before, but we are in the first floor auditorium. In the event of an emergency, if you have to exit, we will, of course, exit out of either the door you came in. This actually is an exit over here behind these partitions, and we will exit out of the building to the doors to our left and walk out. And of course, we do have security available in the event of an incident or health need that we may have inside here. We have an AED also located at the security desk outside. And if we have to shelter in place, this is a room sustained that will allow us to do that. We can shut the doors and be here as a safe room. So just to give you an idea of where we are and what we will do in the event of an emergency. So thank you for being here. First of all, we say to those of you who have agreed to this, accept this role, we want to say thank you. I know this is a time-consuming effort, and I know that it'll be things that, things that you probably rather do, especially on nice spring days like today. But again, we're grateful that you're here. What I'd like for us to do, if we can, is go ahead. I'm JT Young, President and CEO of Memphis Like Gas and Water. I'd like for us to take a few minutes. I'm going to start over here to my right, and we will introduce folks that are here today, and in particular, those of you who are joining us to be a part of this, and we'll talk a little bit more from the agenda. We'll talk about, we'll do some introductions, orientation, we'll give some perspective on the part of our customers, on the part of the community. We'll try to talk then about the purpose of why we're here. We'll have a working lunch because we know time is precious, so we'll have lunch brought in and we'll work through lunch as we can. And the goal today is no later than the assigned time on the agenda. We'll be done no later than 2 p.m. I've always said to people, no one gets upset when you end early. So if we can be done at 12:30, 1 o'clock, I don't think anybody would be upset. As long as it's not somebody in here like used to be in my classes that will raise their hand and say, teacher, did you give us another assignment? That kind of thing. So we'll be done as soon as we can get out of here. But again, thank you for being here. Again, JT Young, President and CEO of MLGW, and I want to start over here to my right with some folks here from MLGW. Let them introduce themselves.
Good morning. I'm Jim West. I'm Vice President and Chief Customer Officer.
Good morning. I'm Alonzo Weaver, Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer.
Good morning. Frank Fletcher, Manager, Project Management.
I'm Reggie Bowen. I'm the Manager of Systems Operations.
Good morning. I'm Cheryl Patterson, Vice President, General Counsel, and Compliance Officer.
Gail Jones-Myers, Vice President, Community and Town Sarah has 2 facilities in Memphis.
Ron Fleet, I'm Manager of Purchase Plan Rates.
I'm Harold Burke, good morning, President of Bank Harvard, and also President of the Shelby County Chamber of Mines, which represents the communities of Arlington, Barley, Cardinal, Germantown, Lakeland, and Billings. Good morning, I'm Mark Davies, General of the Oklahoma City Council, Supervision 8, Position 3.
Good morning. David Jones, Shelby County Board of Commissioners, representing District 11, and also the budget chair for the commission.
Richard Kelly with Memphis Water Health.
Hi, Dennis Lynch. I'm the local chair for the Sierra Club, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you. Mike Coleman, President of Pickering Firm Incorporated, and also a board member.
Wayne Pinkwater, retired MLGW. I'm on the board of commissioners. I'm retired. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Josh Polito. I'm the Vice President and General Manager of the Valero Memphis Refinery.
Sally Hines, I'm the President and CEO of MIFA, the Metropolitan Interfaith Association.
Randy Richardson with the Shelby County Port Commission, also Vice President with EDGE. Good morning, I'm Bill Mills. I'm Director of the Public Works Department for the City of Germantown.
Mark Halpern, Board of Investment Company. I serve on the EDGE board.
Excellent. And there was a couple of MLGW folks here. Let's see.
Yes, good morning.
Roland McElrath. I'm the VP of Accounting for MLGW.
And Terica.
Terica Lamb, Manager of Economic and Community Development.
And anybody else I missed? Jeff? Oh, back to Jeff.
Jeff Lewis, Staff Attorney, Assistant Sheriff Patterson.
Who's that to be appointed? Who else is? Everybody? Oh, yeah, and then over here, we got some more than that. I want y'all to know who to go ask questions for.
Not only him, the project engineer. Kim West, the economic development.
Awesome. Okay, excellent. And what else? Well, listen, one of the things that really I struggle with, I see this local 24 mic is here, which means I guess I can't move around. Mike's got me standing here to do that, but on occasion I'm gonna have to break away. I do want to ask a question though before we get started of those of you who have volunteered or been voluntold, I guess, to sit on this team. I'd like to just get an open kind of one or two comments from you on what do you think your role will be here? What is it that you're hoping to contribute or get out of or participate? What is it that you feel that benefit thing that you'll see that will bring from this experience to this next?
I want to make sure it's not just a simple engineering and finance study, but that it really looks at the needs of the community.
Okay, excellent. I couldn't have scripted that better. That's a great. Who else? Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I would just like to say that I've never been more optimistic about the future of the Memphis metro area. And in my role as president of Shelby County Chamber of Alliance, representing all the outlying great municipalities, the historic municipalities, we're on one team, and so my role here, I hope, is that we're all playing on the same court, and we're gonna make something really happen good.
Thank you. Excellent. Thank you very much. Any other thoughts, comments? I think that it's safe to say that this is a relatively unique opportunity for this community, not just for MLGW, but for those that you represent, the other stakeholders. And I do know there are a few members who could not be here today, and that's understandable. And we're working on ways to make sure that even when you're not able to be here, we will be providing information for you, for your information, so that you can stay up on what's going on. Gail and her team will be working on that. We'll talk more about that a little bit later on. So again, thank you for being here. One of the things that I want us to do initially, after we've gotten kind of to know one another, is kind of, again, the flow of the day. I talked about the agenda, how we went. These meetings will mostly flow this way. Meeting locations we'll talk about in more detail later, but we are looking at moving these meetings around in different locations in the community. So we'll have the first maybe a couple or so here, but we will have other locations. Of course, we'll let you all know. We'll let you all know that in plenty enough time. So what's important, I think, for us to start off with as we level set and discuss what we're going to be doing is to talk about the mission of MLGW, sort of why we exist. And we have been talking about this for the last several months with our employees and even in the community. And one of the things we want to make sure that we start off with here, my mother used to always say, start something the way you want to finish it, is we're here to safely deliver services that create and sustain superior customer experiences. It's really going to be important as we go through this process that we stay grounded around what our real objective here is from an MLGW perspective. You bring a lot of diverse perspectives from the community. We want to be sure that you're aware that this is the reason, this is in our DNA, this is our lifeblood. We're here to make sure that our customers can have these kinds of superior customer experiences. And we don't always knock this out of the park, but this is why we're here, and we think it's important that everyone is aware that this really is our mission as we move forward. So what's our vision? Where are we headed? Right? What is it that we're aspiring to be? And that's to be the trusted provider of exceptional customer value in the communities that we're privileged to serve. We do consider it a privilege to be able to serve the various communities around Shelby County. You all, of course, represent many of those communities, and so we're here to make sure that's part of the reason for this process. We're trying to make this process open, trying to make sure this process is transparent, We think that this is helpful and it aligns well with our vision. So one of the things that we'll do as we go through this process that will always be important to keep in mind, not only our mission and our vision, but also to talk about our values. And I want to spend a minute sharing what we call the MLGW way. It starts with safety, it's integrity, it has to do with ownership, it has to do with inclusion, and compassion and service. And we'll spend a minute here talking a little bit more about the MLGW way, because you're going to hear that term maybe some throughout this process. And when you hear that, what we want to make sure that we all think about are these essential elements of what we call our values here at MLGW. So let's talk for just a quick minute about the MLGW way, these core principles that will guide us. We believe that safety is paramount. We make working safely paramount. It's the most important thing we do. We obviously are here to create a safe and maintain a safe working environment for our people. You all know, because many of you work in similar environments, that safety cannot be compromised. So when we go through this process and we start thinking about things that we're wanting to recommend, we have to also remember that we want to make sure safety remains paramount, remains top of mind as we have these conversations and as we have these discussions. We want to keep that top of mind. Integrity is very important, and what we say about integrity is we seek to do the right things for the right reasons, and we're actually involved in engaging to make sure that we build trust, right, among our folks, so that all of our stakeholders, including you and others, those that you represent, that you recognize honesty and ethical behavior on our behalf. So one of the things that we talk about when we speak of this value is that it is, again, a value that we don't always knock out of the park, but I will say that part of integrity, and I share this with our team all the time, we make mistakes, but when we mess up, we should fess up, and we should figure out how not to do that again. So integrity is very important, and as we walk through this process, we're going to remember that as well, because it's something that overlays this process. Integrity overlays this process that I'll talk about here in just a minute. From an ownership perspective, we talk about the notion that we care about this enterprise, and MLGW is an enterprise. We are very, very fortunate and blessed to be a part. We're very fortunate and blessed to be a part of an enterprise with the city of Memphis that is extremely vital and vital for our community. So we want to make sure that our employees act like owners, that we recognize that we treat this enterprise as if we would our own. So when we make decisions, when we have conversations around recommendations of this team, we need to keep this in mind as well. We want to make sure that we're thinking about what's the most effective, what's the most efficient. We'll keep into this a little bit more later as well. We want to think about excellence and innovation. There are innovative ideas that we want to make sure that we consider, that we don't leave on the table. But ownership is very important, and that's going to be another key driver for us as we go through this process. We believe in inclusion, and one of the things that I think is important, we talk about this as well, is that we serve a very, very diverse community. We have a diverse employee base. I say this all the time. I say, the electrons and the wires and the gas and the pipe and the water and the pipes, they go where they go, and they serve people of all backgrounds, of all faiths, of all looks and all that. But it's all about that superior service. And so we must think inclusively. That's again why we brought this team together, is that we must be thinking about things beyond just what we'd like to do or what we think is best. We want to get the best decisions of those decisions that are made through an inclusive process. This may not be a perfect process, but it's an attempt to be inclusive. And it doesn't always mean that everybody gets what everybody wants, but it's a process where we believe that by getting input from across various sectors, we'll be led to making a better decision, and that's what that's about as well. And then lastly, compassionate service. One of the things that we talk about, we spend a lot of time talking about, is making sure that we provide not just service, but that we provide compassionate services, that we engage with our customers and with the community with understanding, with empathy and courtesy, with professionalism, making sure that we're being respectful. And that's a very, very important aspect of the values that we hold near and dear to us. So again, when we think about the MLGW way, we think about these 5 things: safety, integrity, ownership, inclusion, and compassionate service. And this is not all inclusive of what we are about here, but these are the things that we've chosen to focus on, because from these things, several other values can spring, and we can do a great job, I think, in what we're set out here to do. Well, since I began speaking, a couple of folks walked in. I just want to make sure we recognize them. First off, Doug McGowan came in. Doug's the Chief Operating Officer with the city. He's the mayor's designee here, representing Mayor Strickland. So thanks for being here, Doug. Appreciate that. And then Herman Morris, former CEO of MLGW, is here with us. Thank you for being here. I appreciate your leadership and your guidance. Herman's one of my many mentors that I have here in the community. I have a lot. He's certainly one of them. So just to kind of move forward, why are we here? And so I want to spend a minute on this to talk a little bit about our purpose. As we talked about earlier, some of you may know this, but it's really about making sure that we're getting proper input regarding the optimal power supply options that meets the needs of our customers for reliable electric energy. That's the bottom line. Now, we're not the ultimate deciders. We have a board. We have the city council ultimately that'll make decisions to the extent that we do something different than we're doing today. But this is a vital team to make sure that the recommendation that gets fed into that process is a valid, sustainable recommendation that's optimal for us as we move forward. And so that's point one. We want to identify the least cost, not necessarily the lowest cost, and there's a distinction. If I want to help me with the distinction between the two, least cost versus lowest cost. Anybody got any ideas on that? Well, let's say, yeah, go ahead.
I don't want to always be the one raising the hand.
You won't.
Well, there's a concept called levelized cost of energy, which includes the operating costs and the investment costs, lifetime costs per project.
Yeah, absolutely, one aspect of that. Right, so what you want to think, what we're going to want to think about is we'll get into this a little bit more, but we've got to make the decisions and the ultimate decisions that our board and others will be making. These are long-term decisions with ramifications, risks, impacts, etc., beyond just mere dollars, right? So what you have to factor in all of those things in this process that we're talking about that we'll describe later. The integrated resource plan process is a process that seeks to encompass all of that. So it's not as simple as saying, what's the cheapest car I can buy, right? You can do that and go get a car, and you can find the cheapest car you can buy. But what you want to think about is, I've got to drive my family around. I'm thinking about safety. I'm thinking about fuel mileage. I'm thinking about comfort. I'm thinking about all these other factors, right? And so what you may ultimately do is you may ultimately buy a car that's not the cheapest car you could have bought, but it's basically the optimal for you, for what you needed. It met that optimally. And I think that's a way to think about when we think about this notion of the least cost. We don't want to have anything that's any more expensive than it should be for what is deemed important to all stakeholders. So that's kind of what this is about as well, all right? In addition to that, the preferred supply arrangement, this is important, is one that will be deemed to be the most cost-effective. This is another way to state what I think I just said. The most cost-effective resource mix after you consider all those components, all those ingredients, including risk, supply reliability, uncertainty, government energy resource policies, all the things that factor into how we do what we do and how we will get what we need to serve the customers. That's kind of that's going to be a preference at the end of the day. When we think about recommendations and input, we think about what's that optimal arrangement going to be, like that preferred mix. So that's something to keep in mind. You got to sort of factor in all those things. And risk, of course, as you know, has certain categories, and we'll discuss those later. But that's a big deal as we move forward. And then lastly, I just want to say we're here for the duration. Oh, sorry about that, Mike. We're here for the duration of the process. We believe this is an 8 to 12 month process. But what we want to make sure is that we don't take any early exits. We don't get off on an exit ramp before we should be getting off. And the reason that we need to do that, it goes back to the values that I talked about earlier when I talked about integrity. One of the things that we need to make sure we demonstrate to all stakeholders, to the community and to all stakeholders, is that is that it's important that this is a process that's an industry standard process, the integrated resource plan used throughout utilities everywhere. This is not a process that's designed to get TVA to come to the table with something better. And Mark, previous year with TVA, thank you for being here, Mark. We've had these discussions. This is a process to actually determine what's optimal for our community, our citizens, what's optimal for MLGW in the long run. If it's to stay where we are, do what we're doing, we'll know that. If it's to do something different, we'll know that. And it's the only way really for us to get to that process, to that end result, is to go through this process and to do it the right way. So we want to maintain the integrity of the process. We want to make sure that we don't jump off early and grab on something that looks attractive. It's kind of like those of you who invest wisely. I'm not one of those, but those of you who do that, you know how to be disciplined, right? You've got a portfolio that you invest in. You don't jump off to the next shiny object and you stay on target with what you're doing. That's kind of what we're doing here. We're trying to be disciplined about what we do, get input along the way, and make the best decisions as we go. So just keep this in mind as we think about why we're here, what we're about, and again, we're grateful and blessed to have you all as a part of this team. We're going to be your resources as we go forward. And to that end, let me give you a little bit of an overview. You may have seen this, but this is a bit of an overview of the review that we're going to undertake from a pictorial standpoint. And so what you'll see here is this is the advisory team. This is this group right here. We've set up some working teams that will be headed up by these folks that you met. Dana's not here today. Rod Fleet is here on his behalf. Rod's here. But we're going to have these teams working, doing a lot of behind the scenes work between meetings, right? So as information is needed, is necessary, whether it's number crunching or determining, some legal and regulatory issues or technical issues around financial aspects of options and scenarios, or whether it's about how are we going to be effectively communicating with the community, how are we going to effectively convey to folks in this community about what's happening and things that we're discussing. So these groups will be doing that. Gail will head up the communication group, Alonzo's the technical group, and Dana's got the financial group, and Cheryl's got the legal group. There will be folks working with them to help make sure that happens. And again, they'll be in each meeting, and they will be, or a representative of theirs will be in each meeting, and they will be providing you with information so that you can be providing wise input and counsel to us. So their teams will oftentimes maybe even come in and do presentations for us as well. So this, the advisory team is here, and again, we talked about the input, how it comes in, goes up to our board up to the city council. One of the things that you all may know is we are in the process of having an RFP, a request for proposal, on the street now, due back on May 17th. And that RFP is left to allow us to find the actual consultant who will take us through the actual IRP process. And that those will be back on the 17th. And the schedule that we've sort of sketched out, we have this meeting on May the 16th and another meeting on June the 6th. By the July meeting, we are anticipating to have that consultant on board with us. And so these meetings then will take on a little bit of a different flavor because it'll be during those meetings that the consultant will be on board to carry us through the actual IRP process. And so be aware of that. The first 3 meetings are largely preparatory, getting us ready for what the consultant will be doing as we go through that process. So, and as I mentioned earlier, to the extent that we ought to do anything different, we already have a governance process that's set up to gain approval for that moving forward. And so this is just to give you a pictorial view of kind of how this all works. And with that, I will entertain any questions on what I talked about next.
I hope I'm not out of line on this comment, but I appreciate Doug McGowan being here. MLGW is here to serve the city of Memphis, as well as a broader geography that supply provide service to. Memphis shows up last, or first, if you look at it from the bottom up, on the ACE analysis of energy burden. And I think the city of Memphis and MLGW together, and maybe this group and all the others involved, need to understand and work to resolving those issues. It's not only for African Americans, it's for Latinos, it's for renters, it's for multifamily households. Memphis is number one worst on the list for all of those. And I want to see us find a way to improve the status in those regards.
Absolutely, that's great input, Dennis. No question. One of the things that I did not mention, but I think I need to mention, you reminded me, Dennis, of this, and I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here this early, but I do want to say that this process, just kind of, I've used this analogy before, and it may not be the best analogy. It's like being at a ball game and you've got an inside the park view. And for those of you who've been to ball games, some of you view ball games from outside the park, you've been outside the fence. What we're talking about, this is really about an outside the fence process, right? This is about what's going on outside of the fence. Now, it ultimately affects customers, to Dennis's point, inside the fence, right? Because they ultimately have a stake in what happens. But there's another component of what Dennis talked about, and that's our internal infrastructure and our internal the devices and things that we use to ultimately give power to customers, which you'll see in a minute. That also has an impact on what Dennis talks about. So it's more than just this. You know, this is just one aspect of it, but I do appreciate you bringing that up. We also have someone else join us, Beverly Robertson, President and CEO of the Memphis Chamber. Thank you for joining us, Beverly. This is just getting kicked off, so great. No problem. Glad to have you here. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to any other questions on what I talked about. So I'm going to turn it over to Jim West to talk a little bit about the customer perspective.
Thank you, JT. Thank you all again for joining us today. I wanted to share just a few thoughts about the customer perspective and what's important in this IRP process to customers and stakeholders in the community that we serve. A lot of what's important to customers, as JT just said a minute ago, I love the phrase he used, inside the fence. So a lot of customer satisfaction is dependent on how easy we are to do business with you as your utility provider. Are we getting an accurate, timely bill out? Is our customer service good? Are we communicating with you in the ways that you want to be communicated with? So all of that happens sort of inside the fence. But what's important in this outside the fence process to customers and stakeholders, be they residences, businesses, manufacturers, process industries. And what we hear from customers that's important to them is reliability. And again, that's reliability that comes to the fence gate. That is of utmost important. We don't want to do anything that jeopardizes the reliability and certainty of power supply coming to the fence gate. So that inside the fence, inside the MLGW service territory, we can provide that to the customers that we serve. Low and reasonable cost affordability, this gets a little bit to the point Vince made about the energy burden. But to the extent that we are able to reduce costs through the option that we arrive at the end of the integrated resource plan process, we're not a for-profit company, so any savings we realize in power costs passes through the customer. So there is certainly a stake around affordability and reasonable cost. Energy efficiency. We'll talk a little bit about this as we describe what's involved in the IRP, RFP, and selection of the consultant, but treating energy efficiency or demand-side resources, as we talk about them in the industry, on an equal footing to supply-side resources. Dennis mentioned ACEEE, and those of us who follow the energy efficiency literature recognize that sometimes the cheapest kilowatt hour to provide is kilowatt hour that's not used. So we certainly want to do everything we can to examine the feasibility of energy efficiency as an option within the integrated resource plan. Pricing options, how can we provide pricing products to customers that meet their needs? We take very seriously that in this customer relationship we have with you, it's different from most relationships you have as a customer with other entities. You don't get a choice about whether you're our customer or not. So within that relationship, we're interested in providing choices where we can that help you meet your needs in a way that's mutually beneficial. And then lastly, environmental stewardship. So as we think about the generation mix, the fuel sources that go into whatever our wholesale supply option is, for those that are interested in environmental stewardship and sustainability, that's going to be a big factor because different wholesale suppliers have different generation mixes, and for stakeholders who make that a priority, there'll be a strong interest to meet there in making our ultimate decision about what sort of power supply portfolio we have from a wholesale perspective. Those are sort of the high points I wanted to get about why it's important from a customer perspective to be vested in and engaged in this process as we go through it. Let me pause and take any questions or any comments you might have. And here, I will turn the floor over to Gail Carson, VP of Community and External Affairs.
Nobody knows Gail, but Gail. She'll wanna take a picture.
I didn't necessarily give my picture. Anyway, I am going to touch on our community perspective. MLGW's leadership team understands sustainability as an approach to conducting business that seeks to meet the needs of today in ways that do not compromise the ability to meet the needs of future generations. As we continue to find the most affordable and reliable energy sources for our customers, we are committed to incorporating environmental stewardship considerations into the ways we do business. MLGW has for many years been heavily involved in economic development and community development. As we work with the Greater Memphis Chamber of Commerce and other organizations, our goal is to help grow Memphis and Shelby County with new and existing businesses through various incentive programs. With our partners, we collectively work to strengthen our area's economy, serve as a catalyst for new commerce and development, foster partnerships that build a qualified workforce linked to target industries, and encourage small business growth across the community by connecting people, programs, and resources. MLGW believes in fairness. We can't emphasize enough that we provide the best and most reliable service to every area of our community, to every customer that we have. We provide the best and most reliable service that's available. That said, it is paramount that we provide even more critical services. That said, it is paramount that we provide reliable service, but even more than that, it is critical that we provide a high level of resilient service to our customers, which is a step beyond reliability. Reliability is a planned outage. Resiliency is the ability to recover from certain types of failure and yet remain functional from the customer's perspective. So our focus at MLGW is on being ready to operate through and quickly recover from potential large-scale disruptions beyond typical bad weather or equipment outages. Finally, at the end of the day, MLGW is here to serve our customers fairly and with the best, most reliable, and affordable service possible. Thank you each for participating in this process as we move forward in searching for ways to continue providing fair, best prices and reliable services for our customers.
Thank you. So, one thing, Frank, can come on up to the chair. Well, Frank,
So Frank Fletcher, you all heard, Frank's our project manager, and Frank's really going to be the point person for this process as we go through it. So Frank Fletcher, you'll hear his name, you'll see him a lot as we go through this, and he'll be up and down today. So Frank's got a lot of good experience. He's also a former Southern Company employee and has a great background in the energy industry. So Frank, come on.
So JT talked about kind of why we're here what I want to focus on right now is kind of your role and responsibility. It's a pretty much up here right now, but to really get the true benefits of why you're here, we'll have to be much more engaged as the process goes on. Right. Okay, so as the process goes on. So let's talk about the role and responsibilities. First of all, is to provide input into the RFP process. We're looking for a collaborative effort from the first group of people here. Professionals who can really help us dig deep into what we want to see at the end of the process. Helping MLGW consider various long-term supply solutions from the perspective of the customer and the community. We will continue to hear us talk about those 2 points, the customers and also the community. Input from this team will be used to facilitate recommendations to the board, and you'll hear this again for the optimal electric solutions for the next 20 years. This study is going to look at our suppliers again for 20 years. This is not a year-to-year thing. It's going to be 20 years. We're going to talk more about the RFP process as we get deeper into the presentation. Kind of the meeting protocols, again, like I said, right now, as we get into the orientation, not a lot of conversation. We will get much more in the conversation and dialogue as we get into this process and in future meetings. But again, right here, locations will be held here in the administration buildings. Plans are underway right now to secure the locations. We're going to meet monthly for the remainder of this year and possible meetings in 2020. And the PSAT meetings will be working sessions we talked about. Again, we may have some people here from the general public. We appreciate you all being here, but you would not be allowed to ask any questions during the PSAT meetings. That's this meeting and also future meetings. Well, we are going to engage the community. Starting probably sometime in late August or late July or early August. We'll have some events where we will engage with the local community so you can ask any questions that you may have. Kind of ground rules, real quick here. Team members reserve the right to disagree with any petition. Again, that's why we're here, to help us get the best perspective that we can from our local community. So please feel free to disagree with anything that you may hear from MLGW. Again, with the consultant coming on board, because we need that positive feedback. We ask that only one person at a time speaks, because what we're doing is everything that come out of this meeting, we'll record it, we'll capture the information, and it will be used to funnel back into the process as we get further down the line. So again, I encourage you all to speak as much as you want, but only one person at a time, so we can make sure that we're getting all the important information. Be succinct in your question. We want to ask as many questions as possible, but right now this group will grow larger. Some people is not here today, so this group will grow as we continue to go down the process. So please be succinct in your question. Talk about the rule of 20. So overtime input is expected from the entire team, and everyone should feel free to participate. Again, we want to make sure that you're getting the best out of this process as well, because again, we're going to ask for a good bit of your time for the next 8 to 12 months. Focus on the topics currently being discussed, and please, if you can, let's limit the sidebar conversation. If it continues to go like it is right now, I think that's going to be the problem. So it's pretty quiet right now. So next, our General Counsel, Ms. Cheryl Patterson, will come up and talk about the MLGW governance.
Good morning. Good morning. It is, I think, let me have this. Okay, I think everybody can hear me now, and I apologize because I'm not good at standing behind a podium, so I'm going to probably move around just a little bit. So far, we've talked about kind of where MLGW is from a mission and vision perspective. We've also talked about kind of ground rules for this committee and what's expected that the outcomes will be from the committee. We're going to shift a little bit for a few minutes to talk about what MLGW looks like and the governance structure under which we operate, so that you all will understand as you review issues before this committee, kind of what our parameters are and how we do what we do. You'll also understand why this advisory committee is structured the way it's structured. So just to start off, MLGW is a division of the City of Memphis. so a municipal entity. And it was established originally by a private act of the legislature in 1939. Back then, we didn't have home rule, so if you wanted to change, if the municipality wanted to change its charter, you had to go to the state legislature to get that done. In 1980, there was a referendum ordinance pursuant to which Memphis became a home rule jurisdiction, and so now changes to the charter are done by vote of the citizens of the community. In the both in the private act as amended by the charter and the referendum ordinance, the charter establishes MLGW and kind of what its authority is and what its restrictions are. So if you want to look at the charter, it appears as Article 65 of the City of Memphis Charter. And it is on, Article 65 is online on the MLGW website, as well as it's part of the city's charter, which I think is also available on the website. If you really want to see it, you can certainly provide you a copy of it. It's great bedtime reading. So MLGW is, you hear us refer to the MLGW board. That is the MLGW board. It's actually officially in the charter called the Board of Light, Gas, and Water Commissioners. It was established for a variety of reasons back then, but consists of 5 members that are nominated by the mayor of the city of Memphis, but elected by the city council. In, I want to say 2014, 15, 16, something like that, we did by ordinance with the city council an expansion of the board to include 2 non-voting members who are representatives of communities outside of the city of Memphis that we serve. So you've met Mike Coleman, who is on our board, and Wayne Kicklighter, who is one of the non-voting members. The charter also provides for the president and CEO to be appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council. The structure is the board sets policy and reviews our budget. The president oversees the day-to-day operations of the division. Let's see if I hit the right button. Yes. So under the charter, the Board of Light, Gas, and Water Commissioners was given the jurisdiction, control, and management of all of the energy systems owned by the city of Memphis, or acquired by the city of Memphis, for the manufacture, production, distribution, or sale of all forms of energy, including electricity. For purposes of this committee, yes, we are Memphis Light, Gas, and Water, but this committee is looking at electric, not the other 2. It also has the power and authority to purchase electric current from the Tennessee Valley Authority and from any other person or corporation as in the judgment of the Board of Light, Gas, and Water Commissioners shall be proper and expedient, and to enter into contracts necessary and incident to carry out that purpose with the consent of the City Council. So, just so you know, the board takes action first, because they're the ones involved with the day-to-day operation and have the most detailed information. They then send for approval to the city council by whatever they want to do that spends dollars, and these days, the council also approves our budget, although that does not appear in the original charter. I did not put on these slides, but because of some of the comments that were made, I think Jim made the comment that that whatever savings we identify as a result of this process will go flow through to the customers. And that is true. And our charter says specifically what we can spend dollars on. So it's operations of the utility, it's long-term debt to finance capital expenditures, it's, what else? Everything associated with the operation of the division. anything left over, beyond reasonable reserves, goes back to savings to the customer. So just wanted to give you that background so that you know, as you look at the issues that come up before the committee, what the current structure of MLGW is and how we operate. So at the conclusion of this process, we hope that we will have a recommendation to the President and CEO on a variety of issues that he will take into consideration along with other information provided by the consultant and review, and make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. So the Board of Commissioners will review it, look it over, make changes, decide what they want to do, and send it forward to the council for final approval. So it will take the approval of both the board and the council to implement any changes to what we do. Any questions about that? Yes.
Just for my mother, the reasonable reserve, has that ever been questioned? Is that a percentage of operation? Is that a percentage of a range of some type? Is that ever defined?
It is not specifically defined. Rod probably could answer the question as to whether it's ever been challenged before. But I will say that in the course of issuing long-term debt in the bond market, the market sort of helps us determine what reserves need to be out there for financial security, and that, I'm sure, informs in part the decision, as well as historical experience on loans, etc.
More on bonding rates?
Correct. Correct. So we want to do whatever we can to be financially stable and self-sustaining so that we get the best long-term debt rates in the market. And I think most of you know that municipalities have the opportunity to access lower interest rates for long-term debt than private entities do. So, but even within that, your bond rate, your debt rating makes a difference. Okay. Anything else? Yes.
For the 5 members that are nominated by City Council, is there requirements for certain backgrounds? For example, if one has to come from education, or is it just anybody?
It's just anybody. I believe that the current practice has been to limit those 5 members to members of citizens of the city of Memphis. But there is no educational requirement applied to those. Exactly. Yes.
And the mayor appoints the city council.
Yeah, the mayor appoints, the mayor nominates, and the council elects those board members. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. I think that's about all I have to say as it relates to the governance process. I do want to say thank you also for participating. Your input will be instrumental in helping MLGW and the City Council to make a determination as to what the optimal supply resource is for MLGW and for the citizens of Memphis. Let me also take care of one housekeeping item before we finish. Because these meetings will be will be public meetings, we are not asking at this time for anybody to sign a non-disclosure agreement. It is our belief that all of the information that's provided here will be information that can be shared with the public at large. We are going to ask, however, that everybody sign a conflict of interest disclosure form. There are lots of vendors and others who are out in the community, and we think that the committee members have a right and an interest in knowing that you represent one of those interests, and you haven't told us. So I'm going to pass those around. If you'll fill those out, and hopefully we can get those back before we leave today. Okay? If there are no other questions, I'll get those around to everyone and turn it over.
Thanks, Cheryl. Okay, so at this point, we are great news is we're running ahead of schedule, and the better news is lunch has arrived. I think I hear something going on there. We're gonna go ahead, though. I'd like for us to go ahead and start the next section, which is electricity 101. And this is, again, not intended. One of the things we do realize is that there's a variety of levels of understanding of where we're going to be headed, and what we want to do is level set. So this next section is designed to really cover some basic information, because later when you hear some things, especially as we get into the process, it'll be helpful to kind of understand what this part is about. So I believe Reggie's going to come up and begin to talk a little bit about this. Reggie, give them about 30 seconds to finish the form if they've got it, and then we'll go ahead and get started with your part.
Wrapping up, I've won, and very glad we're in the schedule. I looked at the agenda, and one, I had probably the more important agenda, and two, was right after lunch. And I said, really? We'll do that. So I'm very pleased that we're ahead of schedule. We'll do just some basic terminology. You don't have to come familiar with it now, but over the course of this process, you're going to hear these terms over and over and over. And I promise you, when the report comes out, it's going to use these acronyms to assume a certain level of industry knowledge. So we'll go through some just very basic ones and go through it. All right, we're going to get to the term watts, which is the electric unit power grid work. No different than a 60-watt light bulb in your house. That means that we're having either 60 watts or unit of power to power that light bulb. Power is the rate of energy produced. Says how many steps you take to walk around the block in a certain amount of time. You're going to hear more terms, more like kilowatts. Now, kilowatts is more common to your house. How many kilowatts do you have in your house? How many kilowatts is in the business? That's more common terminology. We tend to talk in terms of the study bill in terms of megawatts and gigawatts. That's worth a million watts or a billion watts. That is, we're doing bulk electric, and I'm going to deal with the residential side. So you're going to hear in terms of megawatts and gigawatts throughout this whole process. And just for an idea of MLGW, our peak megawatt was 3,533 megawatts back in 2007. We've come close to it, but we haven't reached that peak. I think it's just a lot of energy efficiency going on nowadays, a lot of education with the consumers. That's really not allowed us to reach that peak since 2007. You'll hear kilowatt hours, megawatt hours, gigawatt hours. That's unit of measured energy. That's actually kind of what you're billed on. If your house or your business, that's one of the units. Your certain price per kilowatt hour, how many kilowatt hours you use is really what determines your utility. So you'll see that quite a bit. Similar to using the amount of gasoline used in your car. You go out and spend $2.50 a gallon. There's a certain price per kilowatt hour. It's the same concept. You're going to hear load. Load is the amount of electricity delivered or required. It's the load of your house. If you add up all your light bulbs, your water heater, your refrigerator, your brains, all that consolidates into the load that your home needs and will require to deliver to your house. You'll hear the word voltage quite a bit, and probably more likely the words kilovoltage or kV. you'll see that in there. Really voltage, there's going to be really 2 or 3 voltages that we're going to be talking about. It's not the voltage that's delivered to your home, it's not the voltage you see out there on the wood poles. It's more the voltage that's on these transmission towers, those nice, lattice, ugly, 150 foot structures that you see going around in this ring around this. Well, they're not as pretty as some of those. But what you'll see is a lot of those are owned by MLGW, and a lot of them are owned by TVA. So they have routes around the county, so and what you'll see on those is the volts will either be 500,000 volts, 500 or 161,000 volts. It's 161 kV. So you'll hear a lot of terminologies around kilovoltage. All right, you're going to see things referred to as load factor. Load factor is very important in determining what needs to be delivered. All right, you have your average load, just your average everyday load, consolidated over a month. And then you have what was your all-time peak at your house that month. And the ratio between those two, so if you had an average load just a day that was 1 kilowatt, but one day you burned 2 kilowatts, and you have a load factor of 50% or 0.5. So you will see that how important it comes out. You're going to see this thing capacity quite a bit. Now I would strike out from a power plant because maximum output achievable is going to be whether it's a power plant, whether it's a substation system, generation facility, our transmission lines. You're going to see a lot to do with capacity. You're going to see transformers. Transformers are very similar. You probably have it out at your house. You have wood poles. You have that big box on the wood on the pole. You have one of those underground systems. You have a green box in your yard. That's a transformer. All it does is takes one voltage level and changes it to a lower voltage level delivered to your house. You go either way. Power generation. Process getting generation source of primary energy, so like our Alley Steam Plant that TVA has here. Substations. That's the interface. And now there's really 2 levels of substation. There's a delivery point that we take to TVA and reduce that voltage down. We'll take it from them, say 500,000 volts, we'll reduce it down to 161,000 volts. We'll transmit it to all of our substations around the city. Once it gets to that, then we step it down a little farther to what you see on the wood pole lines going around. So you'll see substations go up. Distribution system, that's basically the pole lines or the underground cable that really runs through your neighborhoods and into your businesses. Distribution system. All right, this is what we're going to be talking about. And this is the whole report's going to deal with the transmission system. All right, transmission of electric and bulk and high voltages. And I would underline bulk because you're going to see this term BES or bulk electric. Bulk electric system is a transmission system. That's what you see on the big lattice towers go around that TVA owns. We're very unique in the valley in that we own 223 miles of 161,000 volt transmission lines. It makes us unique. And one, it really lends to this process of looking at getting power somewhere else and taking that power and delivering it around our system. So you're going to see bulk electric system or BES throughout these reports. Supply side. Choosing and orchestrating the energy resources in the most cost-effective configuration. This is really what the whole report's going to be about. Right now, the TVA does the orchestrating of the resources between us. Should we break away from TVA will be responsible for orchestrating those energy resources. Those energy resources are long-term, they're short-term, they're next day, they're same day, they're hour to hour. So you're 24/7, 365 balancing your supply needs and your supply needs. It's a huge change in those years, a huge change to whether we operate. So you'll see that. Demand side strategies that cut back on how much electricity consumers use, help make large investments in building power plants. Very important. As I said, our megawatt peak was 35, 33 megawatts. We haven't reached that since 2007. That reduction, even though it's less revenues, is also less capital that we have to build in order to serve our customers. It's not cheap to build a substation, it's not cheap to get those power substations to the homes. So demand side strategies at your house, at your place of business, really help MLGW out and save the capital investments over the long term. Wholesale power, buying and selling power between the generator, TVA and reseller MLGW. All right, we work right away. It's strike TVA out, but MLGW to put another entity there, and we'd be having to work with multiple entities to get power. All right, NERC, or the North American Electric Liability Corporation. nonprofit international regulatory authority is business to ensure effective and efficient reduction and arrest and reliability security grid. And what does this mean? That is our regulatory agency. NERC was formed after some massive blackouts in the Northeast. And the majority of the council was formed as a corporation back in, I think, 05, under the 06, under the National Energy Policy Act, 05. NERC sets our reliability standards, tells us what we shall do on the bulk electric system, on the high voltage, tells us how we have to operate, what standards we have to meet. Failure to meet those standards results in multi-million-dollar penalties. And if you want to Google it, you'll see a lot of companies are penalized. Now, why is this different? Right now, my area, since my first area is about waste heat and NERC reliability standards. TPA does everything from the waste up. So we break away from TPA, we'll be net meet the reliability standards that we currently don't have to meet today because TPA does the work for us. Sir, really that's who we're reporting to is the Southeast Electric Reliability Council. 8 regional councils that report up to NERC. So when we do all of our filings, people come in and do an audit or whatever, we fund it up through survey, they send it on to NERC. Now, I won't make mention, but we just went through an audit for NERC reliability standards and passed with flying colors about a month ago. I think it was presented to the board. Very confident because it takes an enormous amount of effort to get all that information together, to package it, and prepare for an audit. So we pass with flying colors. So we're good at what we do. All right, fuel. All right, fuel. That's what you need. Power generation plants. Be coal, oil, gas, nuclear, wind, solar. It's all harnessed for creating energy. All right, the wires, what I talked about in the transmission lines, industrial structures, that's what moves it from the generation plant, travels these wires, goes to the factory shop, and all those things. In the home business, of course, they use energy. That's what energy in your home. Through your meter, that's the amount of energy you use to operate all your appliances and all your lights. All right, you're going to have these generation resources, and this report's going to use a couple terms probably called either economic dispatch or stacked generation. So you're going to have economic dispatch or stacked generation. What that means is at the time that you're buying the power, what's the most efficient blend of these resources delivered in the most cost-effective manner, least cost, not lowest cost, but as JP said, least cost. It's a blend of these power generation resources. You know, you can't go out there and say we want 100% of the company, any one of them, you'll do something different. And you'll see this, you'll see the term associated with power generation sources called economic dispatch or stack generation. You'll see that coming out quite a bit. All right, this is just an overview.
Go back real quick, Greg. Just to touch on quickly the fact there is a generating plant located here in the Allen plant. I'm sure most folks know, but if I want to touch on that is a TPA on the plant.
Right. It will be my next slide too. I don't know on that.
Oh, you want okay?
Yeah, it'll be the next slide. But we have a combined cycle plant now. It used to be coal, Allen steam plant. You may have heard of that. Actually, it used to be MLGW's plant. A lot of people don't know that. It used to belong to us. We've had some history of generation. It's been a long time. I think it was commissioned about 1956. Then around 65, we released it to TVA, and then 86 TVA just bought it outright. So TVA converted that from coal to combined cycle natural gas. They're pretty much trying to retire a lot of the coal plants and go more eco-friendly with coal and some more solar and wind, kind of changing their mixture up to how they produce electricity. But we'll talk about that a little bit. Next slide. All right, it all starts up here with the power station. We'll say that's Allen steam plant or any power station. It comes out of the power station, they step it up generally to the 500,000 volts or the 161,000 volts. They go through all these nice little ladder structures, beautiful ladder structures you see coming around, to one of our MLGW or really one of our other stations. At this station here, we'll take that 500 kV of that 161 and we'll step it down to a voltage that you'll see on our transmission lines. And then that will come out of that substation, this transmission substation. We'll further carry that around 161, usually 161,000 volts when we carry it around that, to one of the big distribution stations that we have. That's where we actually step it back down the voltage one more time to 161 that you see on the wood poles, and cable that goes, underground cable that goes to your areas. So go from the generation plant, step it up through their transformers, through their transmission line. We'll further reduce it down to our transmission level, to our distribution stations. And then that's what you see run out of wood pole lines into commercial homes. All right, power flow from generation plant. As I said, either 161,000 or 164 kV, or 500,000 or 500 kV on transmission on lines. This is actually an old picture of Allen Steam Plant. You still see the coal stacks. All this is coming down and already, because all this is combined cycle. It's an old picture of Allen. So they'll come out of Allen, they'll bring it out there at 500,000 or 161,000 volts. It'll flow through these lines. Down to us, we'll step it down to our voltage versus 1,000. I think we're at 115,000, but that's another issue.
You have not mentioned AC or DC anywhere. Are these AC or DC?
We're all AC. We have no DC supply here. No DC supply.
Except solar is.
True. We convert that takes.
Right.
So we flow through our lines, goes to one of these delivery points. We have 4 delivery points in Shelby County. We have one up the north area, one kind of out east, and 2 down the southwest. So we really take power from 4 delivery points right now. And that's important to remember. I think Jim talked about reliability. We've done this. There's no way we can put all the apples in one basket. Something happened, we could put the whole county in the dark, right? So we can actually have any one of those 4 delivery points go down, and our system will bust enough that we still maintain service to our customers. So we might be looking at that in the study also. That's part of the study. All right, so what we do is we deliver to our own substations, and we step it down to what we call 12 kV or 23 kV. That's our substations. And it comes out of that down to through the wood pole lines that you see on the street, and down to your meter to your house. So that's kind of flow that I did a pictorial of, from the power generation down through the transmission, down to where we take it at our delivery points. We circle it around the county, go to our substations, we reduce it once more, finally makes it out to the street on the pole lines, and down to your meter. So it's a very simple process, but it's highly complex, a lot of moving parts, takes a lot to top. So that's my overview.
Okay. Before we wrap up,
Yes, sir.
you talked about there are certain regulatory responsibilities that we sort of share at this point.
Yes, sir.
With TVA and MLGW. If we were to have that responsibility solely through MLGW, will we be able to quantify what those costs are?
We've asked in a report for a list of what responsibilities we would have. And, of course, there's some planning grade estimates, plus or minus 20% are part of it. The main part of it right now, TPX is what they call balancing authority. In other words, they have to balance our demand to their supply. So they take over that. They make sure that when we need it, it's there. If we take over that role, we become the balancing authority. We have to balance getting our power in and service our customers. So that's a huge role that we don't have right now. Now, that's going to require a whole reskilling staff, because we don't have that expertise in-house. You're talking about additional staffing, you're talking about additional monitoring, and it's a 24/7 hour operation. If something were to happen in one part of the system, we had to buy power from somebody else, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you got somebody 2 o'clock in the morning who's going to do it. You can't just wait and do it the next day. So it'll be a 24/7. If you ever have an opportunity to go to TVA's control center, you'll see all their operators down there below, and you'll see their balancing authority people embedded into that call center up above them, and they're looking at that matching that supply, and they're going to take a generator offline or take something out of service, and they got to buy it from somewhere else. It's a power marketing game.
But the RFP does cover what personnel changes.
Yes, sir.
What percent of our local needs are supplied by the plant procedure?
About a third. We're 3,533 megawatts, that produces a little over 1,000. So just slightly under a third. So that's not $1 billion unit. Just tell it $1 billion supply over power. Thank you.
A simple one, are you summer or winter peaking?
We are summer. TPA is summer and winter, because they have a lot of heat pumps out there, but we are summer heating system.
And let's explain what that means. Summer.
That means we, summer, 95 degrees weather, every air conditioner on.
Well, that basically means that we typically see the greatest amount of load on our system is during the summer months. There are companies that are winter peaking, which means they see the greatest demand on their load in the winter months, but we happen to be the summer. Yeah.
Which is really unusual, because TPA was sending out what they call power supply, or asking people to reduce their power in the middle of the winter. You know, why is that? But they're actually peaking a little bit more in the winter than in the summer.
Yeah, and Florida, just so y'all know, in Florida, there are a lot of winter peaking because, you know, that's not unusual in Florida to see winter peaking, even though it gets hot in Florida. Sometimes you have electric load that comes on for just a short period of time when it's cold in the morning, and it can set a peak in January. It's higher than what you'll see in July.
But our peak generally is July, somewhere between 4 and 6 p.m. That's when everybody gets home, starts turning on that air conditioner, starts making dinner, doing all that. So about 4 to 6 p.m. somewhere in July, we'll hit the peak. Any other questions? All right, I'll turn it over to JT.
And I want to get Frank to come up and give us corrections on lunch here in a minute, but I did want to go back. One thing I thought, just pictorially to show, make sure everybody, I mean, we talked about this, but just in your mind, and again, you'll get this, everybody will get a copy of the presentation, so you'll have all this. But just kind of keep in mind that what we're talking about, if you want to think about the scope pictorially of what we're thinking about in this process, start over here with generation, come all the way down through where Ricky was talking about, and come all the way over really to this point. And so essentially what we're talking about is from what we call the transmission substation, essentially, all the way back to the generating unit. And as you can see, because it's all tied together, it affects everyone. It's not just affecting, but it's just important to know that what we're discussing pretty much happens in this realm. We essentially take service at a wholesale level. It's kind of like if you go into a wholesale business, you know, I tell people I'm a Sam's alcoholic, I go to Sam's a lot. They call it a wholesale place, right? We basically take it right here. And as he indicated, we don't really do, we don't do the stuff required all the way back to here. We kind of pick it up from here all the way. We do have transmission on our system, but we kind of pick it up from here in. What we're talking about on the PSAT and all our discussions will be around this area. You asked, I think, Mark, about the Allen plant. One thing to mention that's important, and it'll be more clear later, the physical location of that Allen plant here in Shelby County in the Memphis area is important for a number of reasons. It's important for a number of reasons, but when it comes to what percentage of electricity our load is of that plant, in essence, it kind of depends. It may not 100% be coming into Memphis. It could, but I'm saying at the end of the day, what sometimes can happen is because of, you heard him talk about economic dispatch and how that when you look at generating sources, you sort of dispatch generation based on what's the least cost. So it depends on how much, if that unit's running, which it typically will be because it's a low cost unit. But in theory, that electricity could be coming out, could be going anywhere on the network. It doesn't have to necessarily come here. Again, one of the things we don't have to be too concerned about is from what generating plant we get electricity today. We don't really care. So it's not necessarily essential for us to really pay attention. That unit could be offline for maintenance. We're still getting electricity. That's, so just kind of keep that in mind. But anyway, so Frank, I'm gonna get you to kind of walk us through the logistics of what we're gonna do for lunch and whatnot. Oh, and I didn't mention restrooms right outside the door. They're both right outside the door here. If you need to use that, Frank, so.
Okay, we're looking at the schedule, so that's a good thing. Lunch is going to be available right here. Let's take probably about a 15-minute break. We have 5 lunches. JT just told you where the restrooms were. About 15 minutes, we'll get back, and then Mr. Rod, please will start with kind of an overview of the agenda. Let's take about 15 minutes.
electric number. We have,
Just real quick, we do have extra lunches, so if you want to pick up an extra lunch, or you haven't had a chance to get lunch, we do have extra lunch.
you may be familiar with some other three-service utilities that are similar in size, but a little bit smaller, like Knoxville Utilities Board. They actually do electric, gas, water, and wastewater. Huntsville Utilities and actually four-service utility, electric, gas, and wastewater, and then Springfield Utilities up in Missouri. You may be familiar with that. They are also four-service utility as well. But we are the largest municipal, and in terms of just the electric division alone, the American Public Power Association ranks all of the municipal electric utilities every year in terms of revenue and sales. And in terms of revenue, just like gas and water is number 10 in the entire country in terms of the electric division sales revenue. So it just kind of gives you a perspective of how big we are. We are approximately $1.7 billion organization in terms of our operating expenditures and our capital expenditure budget. So we are very large. The Tennessee Valley Authority has provided MLGW wholesale power since 1939. Randy kind of stole my thunder because I was going to tell you a little bit about a little history lesson about the Allen plant. You mentioned earlier that we did begin construction on that Allen plant that was MLGW in 1955. And we did generate our own power for about 8 years with that plant. And then in '63, we worked out a lease purchase arrangement with TVA and signed another power contract agreement for 20 years to give the title of that plant back over to TVA. We subsequently became a customer of TVA again in 1963 and have been one ever since. We are TVA's largest customer in terms of sales. We're about 10% of TVA's total load. Nashville's kind of nipping at our heels, but we continue to stay about 1% ahead of Nashville in terms of TVA's largest customer. Again, we've said this before, but we own no generation, and the other important point is that we have no ties, no transmission ties to any other generation or transmission entity. So what that means is that electrically, we're kind of isolated only through TVA system. So we're only electrically connected to the rest of the world through TVA. So that's like the good one. Yeah, good one.
The new Millington Solar Facility, do they sell power back to you?
No, they sell that power to TVA.
TVA.
So we actually, the Navy base is actually a direct serve customer of TVA, even though they're in our territory.
Gotcha.
A little bit about our infrastructure. Reggie's already mentioned earlier that we have 4 delivery points. They actually have names. I won't give the names to you. They're Allen, Freeport, Cordova, and Shelby. So those are the names of our 4 delivery points. We actually have 6 transmission level switching stations within our electric system. You say, what's that good for? Well, Reggie kind of talked about it earlier. Kind of lets us reroute power differently among the transmission system. I kind of liken it to a 3-way switch. Y'all have 3-way switches at your house where you can turn the power on to a light with different switches. It's kind of like that. You deliver power to that load different routes, different ways. So that's kind of what a transmission level switching station is. We have lots of transmission. There's some statistics there in the second bullet there, but the thing I wanted to emphasize about our transmission is that it's unique in the valley. So most all of the 155 distributors in TVA's territory do not own transmission. There's a few that do, but ours by far is the largest. And we'll talk a little bit in a few slides subsequently, but we actually receive from TVA a transmission credit for owning transmission. And so that's about a $35 million a year transmission credit that we receive for being the owner, for owning and operating that transmission system. So most all other TVA distributors do not have transmission. We also have 18 miles of underground, 115 kV. That's just the voltage level of our transmission system. The primary voltage that we operate at, as Brady said, is 161 kV, but we do have some 115 kV system. Brady talked about our load. So we are a summer peaking load. This past year, like clockwork, we always peak probably either in July or August around 5 p.m. I mean, it's like clockwork. So generally when people are coming home from work, they get in the house, they start cooking on the stove, they do the cooking, they they turn down the air conditioner, they start doing, laundry and things like that. So, that puts a demand on the system, and that's what makes our peak rise to about 3,100 megawatts there for 2018. So back in 2007, when the economy was really rocking and rolling, we actually had a really, really hot summer in 2007. We reached our all-time peak of about 3,500 megawatts. Over the last 5 years, we really haven't come close to being 3,500 megawatts. We stayed around the 3,100 to 3,200 megawatts as a peak, summer peak system. Forgive me, you've probably seen this slide, but we'd like to talk about the value that we bring. We believe that we bring to our customers, and the value that we bring, we believe, is reliability at a low cost. And so this is what we do. My rates area does a utility bill comparison survey. I've been doing this as long as I've been here at the company. And so this is what this is we go out and we price a commodities bucket. We price 1,000 kilowatt hours of electricity. We price 200 CCF of natural gas. And we price 10 CCF of water and 10 CCF of wastewater. We include the City of Memphis wastewater in there. We've been doing that forever. I'll just tell you that the 2019 survey, we're going to take out the wastewater component just to do electric, gas, and water. But for those four commodity buckets, what we do is we say, hey, utilities, price those commodities out as of January of that given year. So this is kind of a winter bill, utility bill comparison that we've been doing for many, many years. And you can see, I'll draw you, this may be hard to read, but at the bottom of this chart is the residential bill amount for 2018. We're almost done with the 2019 utility bill comparison survey, so that should be getting out on the street here pretty soon. But you can see down here we're at $244.10. Okay? So we're the lowest bill comparison for the 6th straight year. This is the 6th straight year we've been at the bottom of this chart. And so we're trying to encompass about 40 to 50 significantly large cities in this survey. Just for fun, this year we threw in like London, England, just to kind of see, what does it cost somewhere else. But just I want to draw your attention to just a few. I think you can't see this line right here. Hopefully you can see it, but it's Huntsville, Alabama. Huntsville's a TDA distributor, like I said, they're free for service actually with the sewer included. But that number right there is $102 higher than Memphis. Okay, I'm going to draw you to another one up here. Here's our sister city, Nashville, up here. They're at $375. That's $131 more than the citizens would pay for that bucket of commodities here in Memphis. And then lastly, our brethren over in Knoxville, up here at the top, and let's see, where do they go? Where is it at? There it is, right there. $445. You go, wow, that's amazing. That's about $201 more than customers would pay here in Memphis. So that's just part of the value that we believe that we're bringing here to our customers here at Lake Gas Water. So I'm going to flip through quickly. This shifts the survey. The survey looks not only at electric, gas, and water for residential, but also looks at each individual commodity, electric, gas, and water, and will rank those particular cities for electric, gas, and water. So this is just the residential electric portion of what you just saw. Okay, so the residential total bill was $244 for electric, gas, water, and wastewater. And the electric portion on this particular slide for that was about $97.38. Okay, we're still at the bottom end of this chart, but Springfield and St. Louis had a little bit lower prices in January of 2018 for 1,000 kilowatts, that 1,000 kilowatt hours of electricity. So that gives you an idea of where the residential electric bill would rank. This is the same chart for our small commercial customers. And so this small commercial bucket is for 40 kW. We talked about what kW is like a demand or a capacity. And then for 5,000 kilowatt hours of electricity, we price that out for small commercial customers. We're still down at the bottom. We're about 5th on this particular survey for this given year. And then lastly, you can see we're kind of moving up the chart here, and I'm just going to say that when you get to large commercial and you get to like the over, what I'm going to say, the very large industrial type rates, it's kind of hard to do a rate survey comparison because a lot of utilities start giving incentives to customers that aren't embedded in their normal tariffs, if you will. And so when it comes to looking at doing an industrial rate comparison, it's very, very difficult to do that. But in this particular chart, we kind of fall in the middle for a large commercial. A large commercial, as we define it here, is about 500 kW and about 1 million kWh of electricity. So we have some customers that are kind of not represented on this chart. There's about 200 that are over 1 megawatt, and there's another segment that are represented by a few customers in this room, like Praxair, Valero, and maybe the hospital, that are what we call our very, very largest customers. There are over 5 megawatt customers that kind of fall into a special rate category, if you will. So they're not represented on this chart for those reasons that I specified earlier. It's hard to do a comparison with these other incentives that are going on. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alonzo Weaver, and he will talk about EPA.
Question, since our biggest electric cost is in the summertime, not the wintertime, because we have a pretty good natural gas presence here in this area for heating and cooling in the wintertime. Do you have any charts that show how we compare on the annual average or during our peak time for electric?
That's a great question because we get that all the time. Hey, you're looking at a snapshot point in time, right, in July, or what does it look like across months or an average? This particular survey does not address that, but we do have other comparisons that we've done. Look at like dollars per kilowatt hour on an average annual basis, and we can provide you with that. But that is a good point. That you don't need to look at just one snapshot at a time, which is what this particular survey is doing. There are other months that would impact customers' bills. So that's a good thing. Sir.
I was looking at the Energy Information Administration website recently, and adjacent states to the state of Tennessee, most of them had lower average electricity rates than that's the whole state of Tennessee, and there's all kinds of factors in the calculation. So I did not dig down any further to see that, but I said, I want to know why that's the case.
Yes. Was that, do you recall if that was like by class, or was that like in total, was it just residential, was it commercial, nothing?
Yeah.
It was all the stuff. All right.
But it was the Energy Information Administration.
Right.
Essentially,
yes, we all, almost all utilities participate in that. We send information to EIA, and they do compile information like that.
I'll track it down.
A little bit about our MLGW TPA overview, kind of the relationship that we have there, what's involved with that, how we work together. We are currently under a contract that started in 1984. That has several supplements. There are about 150 additional supplements to the original contract. Supplements could be anything, and Cheryl, you can correct me if I have to speak. But anything like a solar program, an efficiency program, the TVA gets us involved in, and we sign a contract supplement to that. One of the more significant supplements are listed below, and that's supplement 17, which was made in 1990, which is our transmission credit. Memphis MLGW is one of the few utilities in the TVA system that has a significant amount of transmission, 61 kV transmission. Nashville has a little bit, but Memphis by far has much more. Only in this with the TVA footprint has so much transmission. Consequently, we have certain registrations, which I'll talk about later, that utilities in the TVA system don't have. Supplement 80, August 2002, gave us retail rate authority. So they gave us a wholesale rate, and we set our retail rates accordingly. It also gave us a 5-year notice violate the contract on 5 days' notice. And this is during the time when a lot of discussion was around deregulation, and you saw a lot of utilities looking at different ways to structure their business, to structure their contract, and that's what we asked for, was 5 days notice provision. And the key thing was no stranded cost recovery. So a lot of utilities were, when someone would leave, they would fall back and say, "We've got all this, we make all this investment for you, you got to pay us." So we want to get out from under that, and contract negotiation in 2002. And then another significant was something like 95, which is November 2003, very beneficial agreement for that was a prepaid agreement. Basically, MLGW had its borrowing capability and favorable rates, so we borrowed money and paid in advance for utilities from TVA, and something they got a discount for that. So discount started in 2003 and it continued on until 2018.
Hold on, but you might point out that many of the other utilities have their retail rates set by CBA.
That's true, yes. Yes, very good point. Many of the utilities, as you said, retail rate is set by TVA. They appreciate full gamut. We don't do that. That's a separation. That's a separate provision that supplement aid provides for. Now, once again, it was said before, we'll say it again, MLGW does not own or operate any generation facilities, nor are there any generation owners within the MLGW transmission operating area. Now, so what about Allen? Right, I heard it. I can see it in your eyes. Allen is actually in the TVA transmission operating area. So TVA actually controls that device and transmission. Likewise, MLGW does not have black start resources. What are black start resources? If the grid goes down, you gotta start it back up. Kind of like your car. You gotta have a battery, but you gotta have power to get power. So if the grid goes down, you gotta have some black start capabilities. At one time, Valero had a generation turbine there at this plant. It was a possible black start resource. But if the grid goes down here in Memphis, then you have to have black start capabilities somewhere. So you gotta have a cranking path to get that done. You gotta connect some generator somewhere else, and it does so high, it goes to this generating point and cranks up your generation. So that's key for when you're feeding out on your own. TVAs are only an interim transmission operator for storing any of all interconnection. So that's that relationship between this TVA has grown together. There was this discussion about you can put all your eggs in one basket. How many people remember the summer of 1978 in Memphis? What happened in the summer of 1978?
It was hot.
And
It was down.
fire police strike, power went out. I happened to be away in college at the time. But I do remember hearing a lot about it. I came back as an intern here at MLGW, that's all they're talking about. But basically we had 2 delivery points at that time. 2 delivery points. One was at Allen steam plant, and the other one was at Cordova. And GAR, who may have had a little bit too much, we don't know. Decided he wanted to operate some switches. And he turned the power off in the whole city. Basically, the Allen plant is not very the rest of us. And I'm not sure that what's up. But it took out the power of the entire city, which means the water system went down. It was a big deal. I heard all about it. My mother called me and she told me. I said, yes, Mom, we'll work with these little But it was a big deal, and it changed the way we operate. So that's how we ended up adding these additional points of delivery at MLGW. So that's why there's a North Shelby delivery point as well as a Freeport delivery point. So we can actually move power around through the city and not depend on any particular 1 or 2 resources. Now, details about TVA will be covered in our next meeting. They will be here, and they can cover a lot of the financials, what goes into the structure around their rate and all that sort of thing. We'll give them that opportunity to present that information. TVA and MLGW get together and look at what we do on our transmission system, whether or not we add lines or reconductor lines or that sort of thing. That's a joint effort. So we work with TVAs as planning studies. Now, we rely on TVA to perform certain calculations. And these calculations are really promulgated by NERC. That's the capacity benefit margin, the transmission reliability margin, and available transfer capacity. These are all things that build into, you won't be tested on this material. These are all things that build into how reliable and resilient the transmission system is and how reliable and resilient the generation system is. You don't really think about whether or not that plant's up. You don't think about that most of the time, except for the one that's long story to tell you. But for the most part, you don't know. You don't know where your power is coming from. It's maybe coming from Mount, maybe coming from another plant, TVA system, but it's being moved around through the city without any real conscious thought about those who are using it. And that's because you're connected and connected, and you've got diversity of transmission resources. So we're going to go into something different. We're going to make sure that we have that same sort of reliability when we look at other power supply options and other components. So TVA performs our seasonal, next day, and current day studies. If we want to take the transmission line out, we have to inform TVA, it's our reliability coordinator. And they run a study to see whether or not we can do that. What does it do to power flows, and how does it affect the local electric system? We do that on a regular basis. Same thing with TVA. TVA has something to do within their own network. So it's very important to do these studies on a regular basis. We have to make changes in their transmission system and changes in their configuration of our network system. That's a very important problem. Now, MLGW is in the CERC Reliability Coordination region. And that's the Southeast Reliability Coordination group. It runs anywhere from, I think the most point is in central Illinois, Missouri, Kentucky, all the way down to Florida, all the way over to Texas. Texas is its own thing, United States of Texas, but it is but that's the Southeast group. Just folded in Florida into the group, so they'll be using CERC for their reliability coordination. And CERC basically governs us around our compliance with NERC regulations. So we're registered. MLGW is registered as a transmission owner, transmission operator, distribution planner, and transmission planner. TVA is mentioned. It's got a whole nother list of stuff. It's balancing authorities, generation operators, and all that sort of thing that they have. TVA, we have a full requirements contract. We are, as I said before, we're 10% of TVA system level. And until 2010, 2011, TVA, we were under TVA's umbrella as far as full NERC registration. In 2010 and 2011, it became clear that because of the amount of transmission systems that we had to register on our own. That's what we did. In 2014, we worked out with coordinated functional registration. And that has to deal with certain transmission operator functions, transmission planning, transmission operations. We have a agreement with them that's filed with CERC, and CERC is approved by them on how we operate. So, besides supplying priorities to Memphis, TVA acts several ways with NERC. It's a reliability coordinator, we call it, to find out how we can take the transmission line out. Balancing authority, make sure that the generation coming in matches the load going out. Planning coordinator, you're going to be making configuration changes to your system in order to meet the load that happens in the future. And they, once again, they're our only neighboring transmission operator that we have recognized. Yes.
You said before we're a full requirement power contract, that's a full requirement.
Yes.
Are those included?
This is included in that.
Is it optional not to have anything? Pick and choose. Shop.
From a functional standpoint, TVA kind of works well this way. If we were to do something different, then those responsibilities change. If we were with MISO, a lot of the coordination would be with MISO. Balancing authority probably would be with MISO. If we had our own generation, then we would be balancing authority, or small B within a larger community. But we would still be tied to the grid, which would be somebody would be a reliable coordinator for that. So it can be with different groups.
On to the question.
Yes.
You're talking about when you have to do something with a transmission line where it has to come down, TVA has to do a study. Are you just talking down to the level of 161 lines, or does it go forward down?
Just to 161. Yes.
Passenger airlines used to coordinate where if your flight was canceled on American, they would put you on Delta or whatever. The regulatory and competitive sphere has changed a lot. Do the utility companies ever say, if you're down, I'll send you some of my electricity, and if I'm down, you'll send some back to me? So that type of coordination.
There's quite a bit of coordination around reliability and security of the grid. You pay for that. That's the point. You can look at a lot of things and say, we can get into this, but you got to think of all the risks and the contingencies and how much they cost.
So in the future, if we separate from TVA, we could still have them as sort of a backup operator, and obviously that's a premium cost.
Right, but I would not think it would be, we'd have to think through, on TVA side, I no longer have a 3,400 megawatt load, and I've got this coal plant or something else over there that I don't have, I can either refurbish or retire. Yeah. So
Let's analyze Memphis for even thinking about separating.
Well, it's a adult game. I mean, you gotta deal with all the consequences of the risk, right?
What's funny is, in 1955, when we built the Allen plant, that very situation happened. I was reading some history about that last week, and we had to have a standby power agreement with TVA, and it got very controversial as to what they were charging to be able to take that power from TVA as a standby backup or emergency. It actually went into the courts, and there's a lot of issues. That's one of the beauties of not having to be a balancing authority. We don't have to worry about that. If something like that happens, EPA's worried about that for us as a balance. So you're talking about the TVA contract. I know everybody's interested in rates. So this is a snapshot of the wholesale power costs at TVA that we have at TVA. So just as a big picture, we spend about $1 billion annually with TVA for power. To put that in some perspective, it's about 80% of our cost structure is around this $1 billion worth of power costs. The 20% is kind of what we have to operate the company on. All of the rate actions that we were requesting during the 2019 budget, those rate actions were for the 20%, to be able to make improvements to our distribution system and things of that nature. So we're talking about the 80% of our cost structure here with the TVA rates. The box right here on the upper right-hand corner, these are what I want to call, you're hear probably this terminology with TVA, these are what's called the standard service rates. Those are the rates that apply to all of the customers that are less than 5 megawatts, okay? Which is, what we said earlier was the customers that are over 5 megawatts, there's only about 35 or 40 of those. They're on a special rate structure that we'll talk about here on the next slide. But over here on this right-hand side, we can see that there's what's called a maximum demand. I call that like a pseudo transmission charge for the transmission system with TVA. And typically those maximum demand charges, not only here with TVA, but across the industry, they're based on your maximum demand either for on a month basis, here like KW per month, you're going to see that term later, or on a KW per year basis. And the intent is, and the logic is that I've got to build or size this system to meet that particular customers or all of my customers' aggregate demand. So I need to, recover the cost around that particular peak. And so that's the concept there with just that pseudo transmission charge. Just to give you an idea for that, it's about $3.04 per kW per month, and these are monthly rates. Then there's demand charges we talked about earlier. We also refer to that as capacity. You probably saw that in the terminology. So capacity is billed on $1 per kW a month. Now, over here on the right-hand side, we have something that's called seasonal time of use rates for the for the standard service. So as you can see, I'm going to just kind of walk through these demand charges. We actually have 3 different seasonal demand charges, okay? So we have a summer demand charge. We talked about how we as a system, we peak usually during the summer months. So that peak demand, this may be hard to read, is about $8.26 per kW at the peak. That's effective for the months of June through September. And it's on weekdays, and the on-peak hours are from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. So you can see that we peak normally in the summer at about 5 o'clock, like clockwork. And so that's demand for that particular month that will be applied to that particular charge to give us our on-peak billing demand for a given month. And just the rest of these, there's a winter rate. Okay, we talked about how TDA is a dual peaking system. They actually peak, which is interesting, they actually peak more in the winter because of the East Tennessee systems. There's not a lot of natural gas on that side of the state. And so, all of their heating is done with like electric heat pumps or resistance heating. And so they actually have a little bit higher winter peak. And so that's why TDA's rate structure actually has an on-peak demand in the winter. And that on-peak period is actually from 4 a.m. to 10 a.m. in the morning. So we're never generally peaking at that time in winter time. And so that particular demand charge is a little over $7 per kW. And then the transition period, we're actually in the transition period month right now of April. And so the April peak, which happened probably yesterday. Yesterday's peak was about 1,825 megawatts and happened at 5 p.m. So that particular peak will be applied for the billing purposes against the $7.31 per kW. So that's a little bit about the demand charge. There's also a variable energy charge, which you see here. I also call it non-fuel. You'll hear TDA talk about fuel versus non-fuel. These are the non-fuel rates that were charged by TDA. There's actually a summer on-peak period that we talked about earlier, a summer off-peak period rate, winter on-peak and winter off-peak, and then a transition. So we're in the transition period here. So for the month of April, all of our non-fuel energy takings in terms of kWh will be priced at that rate, okay? Plus, there's what's called the TDA fuel rate. So TDA publishes a fuel rate every month, and you've probably seen some of this notification come out. Just happened to pull the May rate. But the May rate is about 1.6 cents per kWh. So you take these non-fuel rates times your kWh, and you take your fuel rate times your kWh. And we do that every month. We pay TDA, and some of all that's about $1 billion a year. So just real quickly, yes, question.
The demand rates, are they generated by TVA solely, or is there any other regulatory body that oversees that?
TVA is their own rate setting mechanism. They do take these to the board, their board. They have a 9-member board. It used to have a 3-member board, but they expanded it to 9 members. But they essentially set their own rates. They do take their rate actions to the board, and the board votes on those rate actions. As you know, TVA will talk about, we're in the middle of what's called a 10-year financial plan for them. Back in 2013, they began raising our rates about 1.5% per year. They're actually in the 6th year of that plan, so for 6 consecutive years, we've had about a 1.5% wholesale power increase. So they're talking about what they're going to do in year 7, 8, and 9. This will kind of to be determined. But yes, TVA sets their own rates. Any other questions on this slide?
This is just kind of a little bit more detail. You'll get this in your packet. So we talked about the standard service kind of breakdown. This is just the dollars for each one of the categories that you would see on a TVA power invoice. So the standard service customers are those that are less than 5 megawatts. And so those, in terms of the total for that group, it's the majority. It's about $952 million. It's about 90% of our total $1 billion power cost, a little over $1 billion, is related to the under 5 megawatt customers. Now, this is this category in the middle over here on this right-hand table. This is what we call our non-standard service. These are kind of represented by the very largest customers that we serve. TVA actually has a little bit different rate structure for them. Their rate structure is a little bit more higher in demand charges and lower in energy charges. And the reason for that is that those particular customers are kind of like a 24/7 operation. And I know we'll probably get into load shapes later and load factors. We talked a little bit about that. Those particular large customers have load factors that almost approach 100%. So their load shape is kind of flat. They're using their demand almost every hour of the day. They've got 3-shift operations and things like that. And so there's a different pricing mechanism for a load shape that's flat and a load shape that's kind of peaky. And so they have their own different rate structures, and their cost comprises about 10% of that $1 billion. And the other thing I do want to point out is that there are manufacturing rates and incentives that these customers get so that they can be competitive with other municipalities and locations or areas even outside the valley. When you're talking about bringing in different customers and bringing in load. And so that's what we call the non-standard service rates. Might be a question.
Is that those bills or those costs billed through MLGW, or they get a direct contract?
Yes, no, we bill those customers. Actually, in my area, those 35 or 40 customers, we're the actual people that actually take those units, and we bill those customers. Yes. But there are other distributors in the valley that do not handle the billing of these large customers, and the reason is because the rate structures are a little bit more complicated than just a regular residential rate, because of the load factor issues. There's actually some power factor calculations and some trigonometry that actually go into that. So they're a little bit more complicated. So the majority of other smaller distributors, they contract out that billing service for those customers.
What size user do you need to be?
Over 5 megawatts. Yeah. The other thing I will say is that there are some, you've heard about TVA's hydropower. It's essentially kind of run of the river, and we've been fortunate to have a lot of rainfall over the last few years. I know my yard is just soaking wet still, but that hydro, that rainfall, it's good for the hydro plants because they're allowed to run, and it's almost very, very inexpensive power. And one of the things in the TVA Act is that TVA is charged with allocating the value of all of that hydro solely to the residential customer class. And so the value of hydro to TVA is about $250 million. And so that $250 million gets credited back to the residential customer class. And you can see a little bit of that over here in this residential, this hydro credit line here. But as I mentioned earlier, all the other credits that you see down here at the bottom that we get on our power invoice are mainly related to manufacturing firms that are very large and over the 5 megawatt threshold. The other thing I will say is that, as Alonzo mentioned earlier, with our supplement 95, the pre-date supplement, it actually ended November of this past year, and that was a savings that on an annual basis, average basis, was about $15 million a year. You can see here for 2018, it was a little bit over $18 million. It kind of started out a little bit smaller than 15, but it ended up a little bit higher. But on average, it's about $15 million a year, or about $255 million of the 15-year prepaid agreement.
Are we going to get into the history of MLGW demand for electricity? In other words, it hasn't grown in 10 years, right?
That's correct. I'm sure we'll get into, as we get further along in the IRP, we'll show you some charts and graphs of how our demand has actually kind of fallen off. As you can see, we keep falling illustrated a few numbers that back in 2007 it was 3,500 megawatts, and now we're rocking along about 3,100 megawatts, and it's clear to see in the data that our load is falling off since over the last 10 years. Let's just put it that way. So, any other questions?
Price was curious through the actual IRP process, and I think this is really important to understand because this is the standard utility-based process that you use for this, but it is unique, and it's important that all of us are aware. I do want to go back though, one quick thing to mention on this part, and I don't know that we explicitly mentioned this, we don't have this visual, but when Rod talked about the annual base rate increases that TVA has applied, I think since 13 was I think it's important to understand at the end of the day what really got pushed, what really got passed through to the customers. And if you go back and you have to look at the wholesale pricing that we paid over the last 7 to 9 years, it's been relatively flat. You do not see, and you'll hear more about this next month, you don't really see the impact. You might think, well, we should, that 1.5% increase every year is what's been borne. Actually, it's not, and largely it's been absorbed because of fuel cost offsets, lower gas prices and that kind of thing. So at the end of the day, one thing that we didn't really delineate, but there's a distinction between what we call base rates and then fuel and all the other things that are somewhat delineated, I think, over here. So you got energy and demand and fuel. There are a lot of components that make up the actual price per unit that customers pay. So at the end of the day, what I just want to try to understand when we think about this going forward, you have to remember that, even though you've heard about that 1.5% increase for customers, at least when we go back and look at that data, there hadn't been a net effect of, what would that be, 1.5 times 7, so 15% or whatever, not 12%. So you haven't really seen that kind of increase in net costs. I just think that's important to point out. But now Frank's going to talk about the IRP and the transmission analysis piece. It's important.
Thanks, JT. So again, we talked a lot about our energy limits configuration, our relationship with TVA. We really want to talk now about more about the IRP process. Why did the integrated resource plan start? It kind of born out of the financial crisis of 1970s and 80s. In particular, one example that I put here was the Shoreham Nuclear Power Plant in Long Island, New York. This plant started construction in 1968. In the end, the project took 20 years longer than what they anticipated. The initial project cost was $350 million. And that plant came back in a little bit over $5 billion. And if you look here, the plant never went into commercial operations. And it was sold in 1989 from $1 to the state of New York. Basically, made for Long Island Light Company. And so regulatory agencies said, okay, we've got to find a way to remedy this. And this is really what kind of spurred the integrated resource plans. So again, what is it? It's a comprehensive roadmap to meet forecast energy demand for both the supply and demand side resources to ensure customer service in the most cost-effective way. Has anybody heard the term 8760? Are you familiar with it? Okay, it's actually 8,760 hours in a year. And so what this IRP is going to give us, it's going to give us a 20-year, 8,760 forecast for 20 years on what our projected load forecast is and how we're going to meet that demand. That's the entire process of an RFP. And it's going to take that 20-year forecast and it's going to take the net present value in today's dollars. And we'll know in today's dollars what will it cost us to meet our demand over the next 20 years. That's really the crux. If you think about the integrated resource plan, is what it is. Now, obviously, if you're doing any type of forecast over a 20-year period, things change over time. And so what you'll see is these integrated resource plans are really updated every 3 to 5 years. And if we decide to take on that process, that's what we'll be doing. And if you see here, the The IRP will address risks and uncertainties, what I'll talk about here a little bit later. And as a result, again, of what happened to the plan in New York, 33 states right now, by statute and regulations, require their utility to make public their integrated resource plan. So let's talk about those uncertainties and risks that are really, that as a utility, we have to deal with. We talk about demand, and Dennis, you just talked about it, how MLGW demand has been relatively flat over the past several years. It's going to look at also the power of market prices, natural gas, coal, and solar prices, storage prices. We're going to talk about, it's going to look at carbon emissions regulations, distributed generation penetration, energy efficiency adoption, and also what is the economic outlook over the next several years. So key processes of the integrated resource plan, and we'll talk more about this obviously in July as a consultant comes on board. They'll spend a lot of time because this is a very complex process. This is my third one now that I've worked on since I've been in the utility industry, and it's very involved. And so again, we just want to make sure that we kind of introduce these concepts as we begin the process. But we're going to establish a scope and objectives. Again, your feedback is going to help us do that. Establish that scope and objective. We're going to look at the develop a demand forecast. Again, we're talking about over a 20-year period. That consultant at that point will go out and investigate what are our electric supply options and demand side management options that's available to MLGW. It's going to prepare and evaluate supply and demand side management plans. It's going to take all those recommendations. It's going to take our supply side options, what's our demand, and it's going to basically form into a very complex computer model. And that computer model is going to spit out several different scenarios. We'll start talking about scenarios as we get further into the process. But we have several different scenarios, and really, obviously JT and his staff will be maybe what is the preferred plan, and that preferred plan again, we're going to continue to talk about what's the optimal electric supply option for MLGW. So that's really what the process is going to look like. So why not? Why do we go through this process now that we have not gone through over the past 80 years? And really, we talked about it already. It's just really to evaluate the current MLGW requirements, wholesale power agreement, versus that of integrated with the wholesale power market. New technologies has really changed the way the utility industry operates. And I have a slide coming up that really depicts that process. Resource plan is paramount to ensure utilities can provide the least cost and reliable services to their customers. That's important. So if you look at this slide here, JT talked about before, I spent about 10 years at Southern Company. And when I was there, Southern Company was very heavy into coal operation. And if you look at 2007, when we talk about generation mix, they were 69% coal. But if you look at emerging technologies and where we are today, last year, they dropped it all in 27%. So there is a huge fundamental change in the way utility companies do business. And we've got to take those things into consideration as we can. Look at that 20-year forecast. What's the next available emerging technology that's going to change the way the utility industry functions and operates? One thing that's very important for us to discuss as well, there are several different studies that you may be aware of. And each one of those studies, all except one, did not take into account the transmission requirements if and when we decided to break away from TVA. Several different presenters have talked about our transmission basically is connected to TVA and no one else. And so one thing that we're going to include in the integrated resource plan is what do we have to do from a transmission standpoint if we decide to exit that contract. So if you look at some of the things that the transmission announcement is taking place, it will include upgrades and additions to the transmission system to provide reliable electric service. We're going to continue to talk about the lowest reasonable cost. We assume some form of grid integration with TVA. Again, everything we do right now with TVA, we're wholly relying on TVA. So we will have to break away from them, and that analysis will be included in the RFP as well. include transmission costs to integrate new supply side resources into the MLGW system, either through new build generation or imports from other utilities. And so one thing, again, I talked about other utilities around this country who has performed integrated resources plans. I looked at some companies that are pretty much close to MLGW. We looked at Alabama Power, their most recent RFP was in 2016. And they go through this process every 3 years. Entergy, 2018 was their most recent one, every 3 years. TVA most recent plans in 2015, and they're going through the process now. And what we're going to provide you all at the conclusion of the meeting is actually the integrated resource plan for each one of these three. It will give you an opportunity to kind of go through, digest late night readings, about several hundred pages each study. So not yourself out of reading as much of that as you would like to. But we'll provide you these at the conclusion of the meeting, give you kind of a feel of what we're going to be looking at the end of the process. Yes, sir.
The Sierra Club provided substantial input to the TVA. I wonder if we'd be happy to provide you the letter that we sent to the TVA if you want to distribute it. I'll leave it up to you.
That'd be great. Sure. Right, before you conclude, I have a question. When was the last time MLGW had an IRP?
We have never went through the IRP process.
Who is doing the load forecasting? Is that in-house at MLGW, or is that going to be with your consultant?
That would be kind of a tangible MLGW. We have some forecasting, but obviously got 20 years out. So we're going to rely on that consultant to assist us with that. But it will be collaborative between MLGW and the consultant.
We have a next year, 5 year, 10 year, we'll supply that to them, we will forecast out.
And that's internal to you folks? Yes.
One thing that's important to think about this, again, when I was a Southern company, it was, departments that's all we needed was integrated resource plan. 25, 30 economists, engineers, that department. So it will be significant changes if you go down this route, because again, this is an every 3 to 5 year process to keep your forecast up to date with what's going on in the current environment. All right, Mr. Reed, we'll come up and talk about the supply studies that I discussed earlier.
So, yes, as you talked about earlier, the integrated resource plan will look at a 20-year forecast hour by hour in the future. So that's important for us to have that information. That information will be based on econometric as well as demographic data, all sorts of things about this area. And they'll look at what we do. They'll also look at what their best practices are in trying to come up with these studies. So those are the trends that are going on here in the city of Shelby County. So the power supply studies, we had several power supply studies that have come up. This is kind of what generated all of this. Somebody said, I got a Delphi plant, I want to take power out of the Delphi plant. And then we started with the power supply study. Here we go. So ICF was one of the studies that was done. It was actually commissioned by Nuclear Development. This is the power purchase agreement for output of Delphi nuclear plant MISO integration, which is the MISO system, and the MISO system model. There were 5 extra strategies analyzed. Partial transmission analysis was included. The most economic strategy, of course, was MLGW joins MISO and purchases Delphi. Delphi power, using a physical hedge to cover incremental power needs. The net savings was around $8 billion over 20 years. Made no clear recommendation, but that's one of the studies that was out there, kind of pique people's interest, what's out there, what can happen. And then ACES came in. ACES is a power marketing group, so they want to do the deal. Summary of potential savings for MLGW integrating MISO. We looked at 22 power supply portfolios, no transmission analysis done. The most economic portfolio they came up with was 7% MISO, 51% 1,000 megawatts market purchase, 13% your own 9 megawatt combined cycle, 25% solar and wind, and 4% of quick start start peaking. And just what quick start peaking is, you know, we talk about the combined cycle plant here in Memphis at Allen. There's also some combustion turbines there, and they're kind of quick start peaking plants. You can cycle them on quickly and get them ramped up to cover any peaking load that you have at the time. The identified savings is $9.2 billion over 15 years. Recommendation was to obtain a full cost benefit analysis from MISO and conduct a formal RFP for developers to provide base load power to MLGW. Then there was a study done by GDS. GDS is one of the consultants we use for our NERC reliability work. They're very familiar with our system. We wanted them to look at, you know, is this Bellefonte proposal with any merit to it? And basically what they brought back to us was this. They analyzed the purchase power agreement for output of Bellefonte nuclear plant with and without MLGW and MISO integration. 4 scenarios were analyzed. We did not ask them to do a transmission deliverability analysis, so they did not do one. The most economic scenario is MLGW is its own balancing authority, pseudo-tied to MISO, with MISO purchases only. If I say
Explain that.
So pseudo-tied is its own balancing authority. That would be rebalancing our power going in and out. And the pseudo-tie with MISO is that we may not be a physical tie, but a contractual tie with MISO, and then we have to have a networking agreement with STPA for that power to get to us. Identified savings was $418 million in 1 year. That's the only one thing here. Their recommendation is basically what we're doing right now. MLGW should develop a complete integrated resource plan. The Brattleboro, Prince of the Earth, very interesting study analysis of MLGW purchase renewable portfolio with MISO integration. They looked at 6 alternatives: 3 short-term, 2 long-term. There must be one of them. Just to see if you're paying attention. There's no transmission analysis. The most cost-effective alternative was cut cost minimizing of development of the gas-fired combined cycle plant, combustion turbine units. So we got combined cycle along with CTs, and development of locally available utility scale distributed solar PV resources. Once again, this was a heavy renewable portfolio. Identified savings of around $333 million per year. 2024 is the base year that we're looking at. The recommendation was to be in our contract with TVA to construct a portfolio of renewables, battery storage, and natural gas power energy. So, a lot of discussion, a lot of things out there. As you see, some of the studies that contradict other studies. So, there's no clear-cut answer there. That's why we're doing the RFP. It's more comprehensive, gives you more information, and that's basically what we can show on this chart here. 20-year load forecasting is only done in an RFP, hour by hour. No one else has done that. Transmission analysis is partially done by ICF, no one else was able to do that. And the transmission analysis tell you what transmission capacity is out there, what you're going to need, what are you going to be able to upgrade in order to get that done, how much it's going to cost. That's the important part about transmission analysis. You have to know the dollars. 20-year present value of revenue requirements. RFP provides that. The others do not. Risk evaluation. Now, risk evaluation is important when you look at the various generations of resources. Not just natural gas and cost, how much it's going to change, it's going to waver. Solar power, is that going to change? Wind, is that going to change? How is that going to change? Those are the kind of questions you got to ask yourself over a 20-year period to make these kind of decisions. So some of these decisions are very, very capital intensive. So once you make that move, you've bitten off quite a bit. The process was, the only process that has public involvement, where we are right here, is the RFP process. And none of them evaluated our current and future staffing requirements. It's clearly, as you've seen, as we've had these discussions, we make a move different than TPA, with TPA, we will have to make some changes in the way we do business. For instance, MISO is a weekly billing company. You got to reconcile the bill every week. I don't think we pay anybody that week. So it's a lot of vendors are upset about that. But anyway, but yeah, we don't pay anybody about it. So that's a change for us, and being able to reconcile all that information is important in going forward. All studies that were done were commissioned by a particular community. And, you know, ICF, Nuclear Development ACES was in kind of bringing, they wanted to do the deal because their market, Brown has some very much interest in renewables. Not that they say the interests are not good, it's just they have their own interests. And GDS, you know, we paid them, and they were there to tell us what we needed to do. But the RFP is a little bit more neutral in all of that. And then there's sensitivity analysis on these topics. So when you get into the RFP process, you'll get a bunch of scenarios. You get a high cost, low cost scenario. And you start running those various scenarios and what percentages solar, what percentages wind, how much battery storage do you have natural gas, how much natural gas do you have, you go out on the market, how much do you get on the next day, the week ahead, that sort of thing. Those are the types of things that will be put into various scenarios, and based on the risk profile, get variability analysis on that, and you may come out with hundreds of scenarios, which then get ranked and stacked, that you can figure out, okay, this one looks good, this one looks good, this one looks good. You start honing in on what it is you want to do. So, Dr. Frank. Were there any questions?
Okay, to wrap up, we're going to talk a little bit about the RFP itself, kind of what we plan on looking at. And so again, we continue to talk about the 20-year present value requirements. This is one of the deliverables that we're asking for in the RFP. An assessment of MLGW current staff, skill sets, based on what the industry best practices are. As Alonzo said, if we go down this road, the way we do business will definitely change. Supply options and transition analysis will include. So these are the 4 scenarios that we're asking the consultant to look at. And it may be some more, but on each one of these, you've got to think about it. Just take the business as usual. So we will look at high, low, medium, forecast it out. Self-build, the exact same way. The MLGW MISO option, and also a combination of kind of a blended approach, where we may self-build, but also maybe be in the MISO organizations with. So I would imagine out of these 4 primary scenarios, several different scenarios will kind of generate from that. Again, we'll have a present value 20-year, what today's cost dollars is, and what that costs. This is kind of the meat of the integrated resource plan, what we hope to accomplish. Yes, sir.
Let's ask a basic question. Is it all or nothing with TVA? Or is there a 5th option that's, since we have 4 points of entry, can we keep 2 with TVA and 2 with some other provider?
I was going to say, at this point, TVA has been reluctant in our assessment to go to partial requirements with any of its customers. Obviously, those discussions can occur, but we can't really answer that question at this point.
I understand. I guess I'm saying it from in our most perfect world, in what we desire is local, best option for us. Then they can react to that option, whether it's feasible or not. Yeah. Here's what we're saying is, we're staying or we're going.
Isn't around the clock.
So I would just suggest, I don't know if anybody else feels the same as I do, we ought to at least explore that option, see if it's possible. It may accrue some benefit or some advantage to us, because we haven't gotten into the benefits that TVA has from an economic development perspective, and other kinds of community benefits. You know, I'm just thinking, does anybody else feel we ought to explore that?
For us, the number 1 priority is reliability. If the hospital, the power goes out, bad things happen. So far, I don't think that I know of we've ever lost service to TVA. Is that correct? 78. 78. I don't know. I'm assuming it's part of the study. We get through those studies and whatnot. So.
guess I'll just say, I'm not gonna speak for the TVA guy, but if we're 11% below, would I rather have 0%, or 6.5%, or 5.5%? I'd rather have something than nothing. I don't know, that's all I'll say.
Makes sense.
Is energy efficiency considered one of the supply options as part of those other scenarios?
Yes, we do talk about energy efficiency and demand response in the RFP.
Is the study gonna look at what TVA's future savings are gonna be, as they bring offline the coal plants, bring online the gas plants? They're gonna see new efficiencies in those plants. It's gonna be less costly to operate over time. Will the study look at that issue?
Now, the way we have it situated with what we're asking the consultant to do, it would not look at anything TVA related. This is MLGW Xing out of the partnership with TVA.
So they won't be part of the initial options at all, right? So
No.
That's a business as usual option.
Yeah, that's.
If we continue with TVA, the very first one, they'll be evaluated, if we stay within the TVA umbrella, this is the cost of it.
So we will have to make assumptions around where TVA's future wholesale rates will go, and then we'll do some, sensitivity analysis around, retire the coal plants, use the gas, that might be, the lower end of the bound, or, something happens, there'll be a high end, the bound, I think, but, yeah, that's business as usual.
And I think they'll use TVA's RFP that fixes to come out with, kind of as a basis for that. What we don't know, if we exit from them, how will their business model change. They may, like I said, they may decide, well, it's worth losing light, gas, and water to retire 3 or 4 coal-fired plants, not rebuild. It's going to save us billions of dollars in investment. We don't know that.
well, that's why I think it's critical to study where your supply is coming from.
Right.
If they tear the coal plant down, if gas prices go sky high, we're not going back to coal unless it's just astronomical.
There was a part of your presentation, where, a couple slides ago, where you had, forget the percentage, may have been 25%, but 25% would be 1,000 megawatts of solar plus 500 megawatts of wind. What I'm trying to get an idea of is, right there. So we talked about what type of, I know that solar takes up a lot of real estate. To generate 1,000 megawatts of solar, what type of facility, what type of land, how much are we talking about?
About 8,000 acres.
8,000 acres. So we have to use rooftops, everybody's house in order to do that. And then so it's 8,000 acres.
Yeah, no, TVA uses, it's about 7 to 8 acres per megawatt. TVA uses 8, because you got to do a lot of other stuff around it, but it's about, about 8 acres per megawatt, so 1,000.
Okay, what about wind at 500? So take the turbines, how many?
Will probably be imported in somewhere.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So, okay. Thank you.
So you were loosening up or asking questions?
Yeah, lunch did it.
Do we have any idea what you think the cost is gonna come back in for the RFP?
Martavis, to answer your question, for TVA's current integrated resource plan, they do not even look at wind because solar has become much cheaper. So I think they excluded wind from their integrated resource plan, the current one that they're working on.
Well, something that I offer for this group, two of my colleagues and I, we went to TVA about a month ago. And part of that discussion, I thought about the Allen plant, and Mark, you raised this question earlier. Cost of the Allen plant is close to $1 billion, and if we just look at that peak load, that only generates about a third of it. So if we buy, let's just say we went through the generation process, it would cost us roughly, if we bought that facility from them, it'd be $1 billion. Subtraction, appreciate it, whatever it should be. Then we have to build 2 more. And if we were to fully talk about supply being self-generating, self-sufficient. So right now, and I'll come back to another question that I raised at TVA. So we're talking about $3 billion being borne by 431,000 customers, where part of the discussion that TVA talked about, they had an issue about over $1 billion debt in order to clean up the ash pond. So the question that I raised, I said, well, Memphis customers have to pay for that. He said, yeah. But then they said, well, in return, you all have a $900 million facility in your backyard that everybody else is paying for too. So those economies of scale would be greatly lost. So, and look, I'm agnostic to the site, but I'm not agnostic to what the dollar costs are of doing it. We talk about the energy burden that we have here. There's so much of it, and what I fight for as a councilman, hey, let's live these damn wages. That reduces the burden, energy neutral. And so that's, that same chart should say Memphis is also the second largest poorest community in this country. That's a fact that we get from there. So, I'm eager to hear everybody's presentation. I'm eager to see what this IRP would produce. But the thing that I'm left with, leaving TVA, I'm saying $3 billion amongst 431,000 customers or the 950,000 people that live in Shelby County.
And I think there was a question about the cost of the IRP. We're estimating obviously 6 figures, but I would say $300,000-$400,000, maybe. We'll know those prices when we set it to the And one thing I would say, just a little bit more about the integrated resource plan, it is not an infallible process, but it is the component that multi-billion-dollar decisions are made by the utility. It's not based on the study. It will be based on the integrated resource plan if you look around the country to what other utilities are doing. Let's talk about here again the timeline. What we're talking about inside the RFP, we put 2 different timelines. One is the standard timeline that you have here. And so JT talked about it earlier. May 17th, we anticipate having those proposals from the consultants, and we send those to that. We're going to score those proposals by the end of the month. I won't go through each one of those, but we anticipate on this timeline, the award date of July, second week in July, having the project kickoff sometime second week in July, and then you'll see here the progress reports. So we're going to ask that consultant to bring it back to MLGW in this group before their final proposal will be due in June of 2020. So this is the standard schedule. Still with time now to talk about the preferred schedule. Again, everything is pretty much the same all the way to the kickoff. Again, mid-July, but you see that the progress reports are compressed to September and October, and we would like that consultant to come back with the final proposal in December. Now, again, will anyone be on the preferred schedule? I have no idea. I just know the complexity of these studies, and I would be very shocked if someone came back with this proposal. But if they do, it's going to be a cost attached to it as well. But we'll see, we'll know more in May what that's going to look like. So, any questions?
Who will be scoring the consultant proposal?
So, several people, JT went over the kind of the working group. It's going to be several staff members out of those working groups that will score the proposals. Any other questions? Okay, Mr. Hills will come up and talk about the next step.
All right, I'm back. Okay, so, JC and Franklin talked to you all about the PSAT meetings. We're gonna have about 7 this year, we're gonna have a couple or so next year. They're open to the public, because the public can't have input in these meetings. But in addition to these meetings, we will have up to 4 community meetings. Right now, we don't know the exact number, but the RFP says about up to 4 or so. And at those meetings, we will have robust conversations with the community, get their input, educate them on everything we're doing, and get their input on what they think about what we're doing and their thoughts on the process. So, in all, we will have about 10 to 12 meetings with the PSAT and the community meetings. So this is a critical process, as you all know now, making a major decision, even just to look at where we are with our energy resources. So we want everybody's input because this will impact all of our customers if we never change wherever we go. So we need everybody's input. So on the back end, everybody can say they have say in the process. So, JT did mention that one of the 4 working committees is going to be communications. And I will chair that committee, and this will be an actual working committee communicating to you and the public every step of the way. We're going to be as transparent as we possibly can. We're not going to miss one step on making sure everybody in this community is aware of what we're doing, because like I said earlier, this is a decision that impacts this entire community. So, we don't have the dates yet for the 4 community meetings, but as soon as we get those dates and locations, I'll make sure that we have those. If possible, before you leave, I really would like you all to provide us with an email address that you want us to send our communications to you regarding this, because some did not receive their emails and they got announcements last week. And like I said, I want to make sure that you get all the information that is available and that you want regarding what we're doing. So, is there anything else I can get up there? Okay. Any questions about? Okay.
Will those community meetings be listed on the website?
They will be listed on the website, yes. We're gonna get them on the website and everywhere, so everybody will know about it. And anybody will be able to come.
I just want to point out that you used a batch email service when you sent out that notice, and you got caught in spam because most systems see that as spam.
Okay,
So I just want to let you know that.
Okay, so I'm gonna work around trying to send it from the MLGW site, because I think a few other people mention it to me as well. Because we do want you to get the information, and then we're gonna call back and make sure you get the information. We did make some personal phone calls to remind people about the next day. So we're gonna make sure that our communication gets to you and that it actually works. So, as I said, if you can leave us your email addresses, so we can make sure we can have proper information to you. We'll send it from the site that won't go to spam. Harry Jensen? Did you want something, Commissioner? Dennis, did you want?
Yeah, are you gonna have a project, Google Drive or some other, resource that all the documents will be carried on and people could access? And maybe even certain documents could be updated right there. Okay. That's the problem.
Any more suggestions to make the communications easier for you?
Okay, let's talk a little bit now about the next meeting, have the expectations. If you would, and then what we're going to give you, you will have a jump drive that has all the presentation on today, and also the 3 integrated resource plans from Alabama, Energy, and TVA. Take a look at those if you can. The expectation is not for you to read through all of them. But read through those, come back with any questions, because one thing we'll do at the next meeting is open up questions. Again, from a lot of information to you today, so please take that time between now and our next meeting just to look over security. Again, because we're asking your input at the next meeting. The next meeting is going to be, TVA will kind of lead that entire presentation. We're going to really talk about that current and future state of TVA. Again, we spent a lot of time talking about MLGW today, and we'll give TVA the floor at the next meeting. Any questions?
Dates for the next 2 meetings that were mentioned earlier.
May 16th and June 6th.
And they will, that calendar will also be on the jump drive that you receive. The calendar of all the events.
Thanks, Frank. So, where we are now is we're wrapping up all some time back. But the bad news is because we're giving y'all some time back, we're gonna do a pop quiz. So this is how this goes, right? No, this is really to kind of recap what we talked about, and it's really, something that this is from JT, so it's probably certainly imperfect. So let's see who's paying attention. Y'all, I say I'll take copious notes, and it's an open book test, so no reason not to get 100 right. Actually, I not got 100 on open book test before. That's another story. So how about let's go back. MLG values. We talked about our values earlier. So who can just share one of the 5? I should have said give me all 5. All right. We also talked about what our customers value. We started off. Jim gave us an overview of the things that we think are valuable for our customers. So can anybody give me one of those? Reliability. And what else? Cost. Yep. Okay. All right. Y'all good. All right. How about one element? Gail talked about community value. What about an element that our community values? Fairness. That was hit pretty hard, right? There were some others there that we'll talk about as we go. All right. So this is a little bit more nuanced. So this is not just a one-word answer. Somebody care to share how is this decision going to be made at the end of the day? How's that going to happen? Just high level.
PSAT recommendation to the president, further recommendation to the board recommendation to the city council.
Okay, so, tell us it's a name guy. I've been around with those folks all my life. Yes, okay, good job.
And the working groups and the consultant are going to provide big input in that.
Absolutely, as we go through the process. Very good. All right, the rest of these are true or false. Okay, these are true or false. So you 50-50. I'll give you a quick story. The first day of my, this haunts me to this day, it was 40 years ago. I was taking a differential equations class at the junior college. First day of the class, the same teacher that taught me Calculus 3 was my differential equations teacher. And we had about 20 in the class, and so he decides to start off by doing what I'm doing. He said, don't just give y'all questions. And he knew me, and so he says, draw, you take the first question. And I was like, oh, great. I'm not even here yet, but mentally. He says, that equation number 3 on page 10, is that linear or non-linear? And I was like, I don't know, to myself. And, but I did go this, I said, it's a 50-50 chance, right? So I just said, whatever I said, it was wrong. And I said, it's linear. He said, now take a look at it again. I said, oh, yeah, it's not. So that's how you're going to do these true false. All right, so true or false, MLGW owns generation.
False.
Okay. True or false, MLGW owns transmission lines.
True.
Okay. All right. True or false, MLGW is a winter peaking utility.
False.
Okay. True or false, the IRP will select one of the 4 proposals we received. Okay. 8760 represents the number of hours in a year. Okay. And then lastly, the IRP includes a review of the MLGW internal infrastructure. It's false because remember we do the inside the park, outside the park compensation, right? So this will be considered predominantly the outside of the park. And really to Frank's point, I try to say these terms 80-20. This is not going to be a perfect process, but I think at the end of the process, we would all be able to look back as well as the community and say, this was an effort worth having because it is a part of a long-term vision for the Memphis and Shelby County community. And I think it'll be worthy of the time and effort and attention that it receives. So let me just then say again, thank you for being here. I want to hit on a couple more points that we talked about today. So we went over some things about the governance process and about really what the essence of this is about. I do want to reiterate what someone said earlier, and that is we come into this, MLGW comes into this you say, well, you know, you've been with TVA for 8 years, you know, you really don't want to leave TVA. Let me tell you right now, that's why we put the community and customer information up front. You're hearing this from the president of MLGW. Our concern is reliability and reasonable low cost for our customers, period, right? So at the end of the day, that's what I'm married to, right? And I think that I can speak for our board and certainly for the council. We all have to be engaged in the process of making sure our customers have the power they need. It's reliable, it's low cost, it provides them what they need to sustain the kind of quality of life. So as we go into this, we have to always remember that's ultimately what we're here for. We're not here to pursue or please a special interest. We're not here to, you know, necessarily be antagonistic against this group or anything. It's not about that at the end of the day. That's why we have such a, we think, cross-section of folks, some of whom will be with us next time they couldn't be here today. And so remember that, you know, as we go through this process, what you will receive, and Dennis, I appreciate your suggestion about, I think, Google Docs or something where we can upload and date this information might make it a little bit more convenient. But when you leave today, you heard Frank talk about the jump drive that you'll receive that does have this presentation plus all that other good bedtime reading on it. We were trying to be environmentally friendly, didn't want to print a whole bunch of paper. When we do get to the third meeting, where we will cover the studies that we have in a little bit more depth. We got a high level view of it today, but we will talk about those studies a little bit more only because they've been out there for a while and there's a lot of folks telling you a lot of things from those studies that we think it's important that you understand. Not that we're going to select one of those studies and make a decision on it, but there is good information that's contained you know, in those studies. And the other thing I'll mention, Councilman Jones talked about, and I want to make sure everybody understood where you may have covered this, but I want to kind of reiterate, when you talk about this plant that we have, there's a TVA plant here, if we were to break away from TVA, we'd probably have to construct 2 more. Part of the reason that we, and this is getting down the road a little bit, but one of the things that's going to make this process a little, you heard Reggie say this is a complex thing. The reason it's complex is because we are in a very unique situation. We are a relatively large electric utility that is a wholesale customer of a large generating entity, TVA. And making the transition from being a large wholesale with no generation, we're fairly unique. When we met with MISO, we talked about this. We talked to MISO about this, but we're fairly in a unique situation because of the size we are and what we would be requiring from anyone else that we would go to. It's not that this happens every day. So you have to remember when he talked about that we need 2 more plants. There's something called reserve margin. You don't want to, you know, when you get ready to talk about being your own generator balancing authority, you heard that term over and over again. You really can't just say, okay, well, we've got 1,000, I need 1,000 megawatts. That's my load. Well, you don't necessarily want to just have 1,000 megawatts because you have to plan for contingencies. So you'll hear in the conversation as we go forward and in this process, you may scratch your head a little bit about, well, why 3 of those? You know, we only got 1 here, not enough. Well, you've got to be planning for a lot of things that we can't yet anticipate. And although the utility industry across the country is seeing a decline in demand, on a per customer basis, usage per customer has been declining really since the recession. If I go back and think about it, it was back in about the mid-2000s, 2007 and 8, we started tracking, I know at Southern Company, Frank, I don't know if were you at Southern? Yeah, we started seeing it at Southern Company where usage per customer was going down for a variety of reasons. And so when we start talking about now a plan going forward, I don't know how many of us would feel comfortable today without any more information saying, well, we know what the load's going to be like for the next 20 years. When you talk about an 760 forecast for 20 years, I'm not sure how many of us are comfortable saying, notwithstanding what we've seen in the last decade or so, because who knows what's going to happen. When we begin to think about doing something different, there's a part of me that gets excited because it's different. You know, there's another part of me that says, I kind of like certainty. And what we're going to be needing from you is you're going to need to help us as we think through this process of delving into the uncertain, because that's where we're headed if we do this. There's some things that we just don't know, and we're going to have to make some assumptions. And so that risk issue that you saw us talk about is very important, because the risk associated with making the decision that we make is crucial. Dollars matter, that's important, cost is important, but one of the things I always tell folks is you can get free electricity, and you can get electricity really, really cheap and get it maybe 2 or 3 times a week. If you want it 24/7, if you want it 24/7, I used to work with a guy who said sometimes, folks need to realize you can sweat back in the light in the dark, and when it comes to power, you gotta be careful. So we always want to measure twice and cut once, and I think that's going to be important. So look, any other thoughts, closing thoughts, questions? Because when we get into the next meeting, we'll do a brief recap of this meeting, because we will probably have members who will be in that meeting who were not in this meeting. And so for their benefit, we'll do that. The other thing that you'll notice that we will do is we will be redundant, and that's by design. It isn't that, we're forgetful, although I am. We are going to sometimes say things over and over again because we want to really relentlessly communicate some things that are important for you to understand, so that when you talk to your folks, constituents, stakeholders, you will have heard something more than once, and you can convey it and articulate it in a way that's accurate, that's important. And lastly, when we go through, as we go through this process, while we stress the integrity of the process is really important, it's because when you make a decision like this, and really when you make any decision, but certainly when you make a decision of this magnitude, what you really want to be able to say is that you had the right information when you made that decision. And so that's part of what this process is about as well. So again, Jen, I know you came from out of state, you traveled, so thank you for being here especially. I know your schedule is tough because of where you are, but we do appreciate you being here. Anything else for the good? Anybody, our team, anybody we need to talk about? Okay, yeah, leave your badge at your table. We'll recycle those. Make sure that we have lunch for you when you come back. Yes, sir.
Of the 3 studies, which one is the most closely related to our situation?
When you say our situation, you mean?
Well, I mean, system-wise, which one would be probably most like ours?
Oh.
Got TVA.
Oh, you're talking about IRPs? Oh, okay, I thought you were talking about proposals, that's why I was struggling. No. Well, they all had generations. Yeah, so, see, and this, I'm glad you asked that question, Randy. I meant to say this. One of the things that is also unique about the process we're doing is generally the IRP process is done when a company has generation. And what you're trying to think about is you're trying to figure out, should we add load? Should we shut down coal? Should we put on gas? Should we add more renewables? How much? If we do that, it's a way to kind of deal with your large investment out there in generation. So those companies that you heard Frank talk about, all of them have their own generation. And so generally what those IRP processes are about, and TVA is going through that, finishing up theirs now, you're really trying to think about your resource allocation and how do you go forward in the best way, in the least cost way, dealing with that. Because in some cases, those generating units are 30, 40, 50, 60 years old. And, if you need more generation, if your forecast says you will need more generation, or even to sustain the existing load you have, you may have to shut down some and add others. And if you're going to add some, what kind should you add? And what's the cost for that? And over what time period? So really about every 3 to 5 years, most utilities update their IRP process. It's kind of like just to make sure they're keeping on top of things. So I don't know that there was any one of them that was exactly like us. Alabama Power is a larger, probably a couple, 2.5 times. What did you say, Alabama? It's about 2.5 times the size. They had about a million.
2.5 times.
Yeah, about 2.5 times. So, but yeah, that's kind of. Yeah. Okay. Somebody else?
So is Alabama Power part of Southern Company?
Yes.
Okay, but as I was mentioning to Commissioner Jones here, we still talking about Southern Company is a publicly traded organization. So I still talk about the fact that TVA is a quasi-governmental body.
Yep.
Profit is not voted for them. Right. They're not indebted to their shareholders. They
Right.
don't have to drive 40 hours. And with MLGW being a division of the city, there's no profit motive with MLGW there.
Exactly. Yep, absolutely. Yes, it's a very different model, slightly different model. So, but there are municipals that have their own generation. And so we just happen to be one that we just don't have our own generation. But there are, you know, land utilities has their own JDA, Jacksonville Electric has theirs, several have generation. All right, anything else? Yes, Rick.
You want to touch base with anybody else in the valley?
I'm sorry.
Anybody else in the valley left TVA?
Oh, so question is, has anybody else in the valley ever left TVA? Now, it's my understanding, y'all correct me, there have been two, Paducah and Bristol, right? Bristol, Virginia. There have been two LPCs that have left TVA in the past, and the status of both of those now, Paducah.
Bristol came back.
Bristol came
They're
back.
back in the fold. Paducah's still out.
Right.
Their rates have gone through the roof.
Rates have gone up. But I will say this, to be clear, neither of those two were the size of MLGW. So that's something else to keep in mind. So just remember, it's gonna be, that's what's gonna make this fun. It's gonna make this fun. This is gonna be a little different. Yeah, so it's gonna be a little different. All right. Well, look, again, we're giving you about 40 minutes back today, and hopefully you'll come back next time. See, so we did that. And we'll be, there's a list going around. We want to make sure we have the correct, and Doug's got it. Make sure we got your correct email so that we can communicate, and look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.